The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For millennia, Jedi and Sith have debated whether the Force has a will of its own, whether it guides events towards some cosmic purpose. But what happens when someone, enters this galaxy who doesn't care about the Force, who's never heard of lightsabers or the Republic, who carries only brutal determination and rage forged in the fires of survival? What happens when the galaxy's forgotten underclass finds a champion who speaks their language? Bruce Wayne had been fighting in Gotham's Undercity when reality tore apart. Not the gleaming Gotham of skyscrapers and Wayne Enterprises, but the real Gotham, the flooded tunnels where the city's discarded people lived, where children went hungry while the wealthy above pretended they didn't exist. He'd been defending a makeshift shelter from corporate enforcers when the rift opened, a wound in space itself that screamed with energy that felt wrong. He'd been pulled through before he could even raise his axe. The transition was violent, an eternity compressed into a microsecond. Bruce's consciousness fractured across impossible geometries, his body stretched through dimensions that shouldn't exist. Then reality reasserted itself with the subtlety of a freight train, and he was falling. He hit metal, hard. His body, conditioned through years of brutal street fighting and manual labor, absorbed the impact through pure muscle and instinct. He rolled, came up in a defensive crouch, axe already in hand. The weapon was crude compared to the gadgets his counterpart in other universes might carry, a salvaged fire axe with a reinforced handle and a blade he'd sharpened himself. But it had ended plenty of fights in Gotham's depths. The smell hit him first. Industrial waste, ozone, something organic and rotting, and underneath it all, desperation. The same smell as Gotham's forgotten levels, but with alien undertones he couldn't identify. Bruce's eyes adjusted to the dim lighting. He was in some kind of industrial sector, massive pipes overhead dripping unknown fluids, grated metal floors stained with substances he didn't want to identify, and the distant hum of machinery that vibrated through his boots. The architecture was wrong, not wrong like poorly designed, but wrong like it had been built by minds that thought differently about space and structure. Movement in the shadows. Bruce's grip tightened on his axe. Multiple figures, trying to be stealthy but failing because his hearing, trained to catch the footsteps of muggers in Gotham's echoing tunnels, picked up every scrape of boot on metal. Easy money, a voice said in a language Bruce had never heard. But somehow, impossibly, he understood it. Big human, looks lost. Equipment's probably worth something. Careful, another voice warned. That's not a vibroblade. What kind of primitive carries an actual axe? Bruce didn't wait for them to finish strategizing. He'd learned young that in the underworld, hesitation got you killed. He moved. The first attacker, some kind of green-skinned humanoid with head tails, barely registered Bruce's charge before the axe handle caught him across the jaw. Bruce used his momentum to shoulder-check the second figure, then spun and brought the axe blade down in a controlled arc that stopped millimeters from a third attacker's throat. Drop it, Bruce growled, gesturing to the crude energy weapon in the alien's hands. The weapon, some kind of pistol that glowed with contained energy, clattered to the floor. The three attackers stared at Bruce with expressions that transcended species, fear mixed with calculation. "Where am I?" Bruce asked, his voice carrying the flat authority of someone who'd interrogated plenty of Gotham's criminals. "And I'm only asking once." Nar Shaddaa, the green-skinned one wheezed, holding his jaw. Sector 47. The Undercity. He paused, studying Bruce with new wariness. "You're not from here. Not even from this system. What are you?" "Someone having a really bad day," Bruce replied. He kept the axe steady, his eyes scanning the environment for escape routes and tactical advantages. "Old habits." Nar Shaddaa. "That mean anything specific, or is that just the name of this cesspool?" "You really don't know?" The third attacker, human, probably, though scarred beyond easy identification, laughed without humor. "You're on the smuggler's moon, friend. Hutt territory. Empire pretends to control it, but down here. He gestured to the dripping infrastructure around them. Down here, the only law is survival. Something clicked in Bruce's tactical mind. Hut. Empire. The terms meant nothing specifically, but the context was clear: organized crime and authoritarian government. Same power structures as Gotham, just with different names. The Undercity, Bruce repeated, lowering his axe slightly. People live down here. Where else we gonna live? The green-skinned alien shot back. Upper levels are for people with credits. Down here's for the rest of us, the workers, the refugees, the ones the galaxy forgot about. He paused. You really don't know anything, do you? Bruce studied them with new understanding. Not just muggers, desperate people trying to survive in a system that had abandoned them. The same people he'd spent years protecting in Gotham's depths. No, Bruce admitted, deciding on calculated honesty. I don't. But I know what it looks like when people get forgotten by those above them. He sheathed his axe on his back, a gesture of measured trust. Tell me about this place. About the Empire. About who's keeping you down here. The human laughed again, but this time with something like respect. You want the full history or just the parts that'll keep you alive? Start with survival, Bruce said. We'll work up from there. Over the next hour, sitting in the shadows of Nar Shaddaa's industrial undercity, Bruce Wayne learned about the galaxy he'd fallen into. The Galactic Empire, a tyrannical regime that controlled most known space through fear and overwhelming military force. The Hutt Cartel, crime lords who ruled the Outer Rim through vice, slavery, and brutal economics. The Rebel Alliance, a scattered resistance movement trying to restore democracy, though most people in the Undercity thought they were just another group of idealists who'd forget about the working class once they got power. And he learned about the people who lived down here, the ones who worked the factories, who processed the waste from the upper levels, who survived on scraps while the wealthy above lived in luxury built on their backs. It was Gotham. Different names, different species, different technology, but the same fundamental exploitation. The Empire don't care about us as long as we keep the factories running, the human explained. His name was Jace, a refugee from some planet Bruce had never heard of. The Hutts bleed us for protection money. The Rebel Alliance. They're fighting their war in space while we're trying not to starve. Down here, you survive by keeping your head down and not making waves. And if you do make waves? Bruce asked. Enforcers come, the green-skinned alien, Rizzo, said darkly. Corporate security, Hutt mercenaries, sometimes even Imperial stormtroopers if someone gets too loud about workers' rights. They crack skulls, disappear troublemakers, make examples. Message is clear, stay in your place or suffer. Bruce's jaw tightened. He'd heard this story before, lived it in Gotham's flooded levels where corporate interests had literally buried an entire population beneath the city. Where the wealthy looked down from their towers and pretended the people below didn't exist. How many people live down here? He asked. Millions, Jay said. Maybe tens of millions just in this sector. Nar Shaddaa's vertical goes up for kilometers. The higher you go, the better life gets. Down here at the bottom. He gestured to the dripping pipes and polluted air. This is where the galaxy dumps the people it doesn't want to think about. Something hardened in Bruce's expression. Rizzo saw it and flinched slightly. I know that look, Rizzo said quietly. That's the look of someone about to do something stupid. Not stupid, Bruce corrected, standing and hefting his axe. Necessary. You said enforcers crack down on troublemakers. Where do they operate from? And how often do they patrol down here? Wait, Jace said, alarm in his voice. You just got here. You don't know this place, don't know the power structures, don't even know what a blaster is. It's the energy pistol, Bruce interrupted, pointing to the weapon on the ground. Contained plasma or particle beam, judging by the glow. Probably lethal. Point and shoot. He looked at them. I learn fast. Now answer the question. The three former muggers exchanged glances. Then Rizzo sighed and pulled up a crude holographic map from a wrist device, technology that made Bruce's engineer mind itch with questions he'd explore later. Enforcer Station is here, Rizzo said, pointing to a structure 3 levels up. Corporate security for the factory district. They patrol every 6 hours, sweep the workers' quarters looking for stolen equipment or people trying to organize. Last week they beat a woman half to death for trying to start a union. Bruce studied the map, his tactical mind already processing approach vectors, structural weaknesses, and timing windows. How many enforcers? Dozen, maybe 20, Jace said. All armed with blasters, some with stun batons. They're not military, but they don't need to be. Who's gonna fight back? We're tired, hungry, and unarmed. You were armed 10 minutes ago, Bruce pointed out, nodding to their dropped weapons. That's different, Rizzo objected. We were gonna rob you, not start a war with corporate security. You fight them, they don't just beat you, they kill you and make sure everyone sees. It's not about justice. It's about keeping us afraid. Bruce had heard enough. He'd spent years fighting this exact battle in Gotham, the powerful exploiting the powerless, maintaining control through fear and violence, counting on desperation to keep people compliant. But Bruce Wayne had never been good at staying compliant. I'm going to that enforcer station, he said flatly. I'm going to make sure they understand that beating workers has consequences. And I'm going to do it in a way that sends a message, the people down here aren't unprotected anymore. You're insane, Jace breathed. One man with an axe against armed enforcers. You'll be dead in minutes. Maybe, Bruce acknowledged. He checked his equipment, the axe, the reinforced gloves he'd made from salvaged materials in Gotham, the makeshift armor plates he wore under his dark clothing. Not much, but it had been enough in the Undercity. But I've fought worse odds. And I've learned that bullies, no matter what galaxy they're in, all break the same way. He started toward the ladder leading up to the next level. Behind him, he heard Rizzo mutter something in his alien language, then the sound of weapons being picked up. We must be crazy, Jay said, but if you're going anyway, someone should make sure you don't walk into a trap. Bruce looked back at them, 3 desperate people who tried to mug him an hour ago, now volunteering to fight beside him against impossible odds. It reminded him of the people he'd gathered in Gotham's depths, the found family of the forgotten who'd learned that together, they were stronger than the systems that oppressed them. Stay behind me, Bruce said. And when this is over, we're going to have a longer conversation about organizing the workers in this sector. Because if there's millions of you down here, you're not powerless. You just haven't realized it yet. They climbed through Nar Shaddaa's industrial bowels as the smuggler's moon's artificial lights created the illusion of dusk in the perpetual twilight of the Undercity. Bruce Wayne had been in this galaxy for less than 2 hours, but he'd already identified his mission. The Empire. The Hutts. The wealthy who profited from exploitation. They were all about to learn that Gotham's Forgotten had sent their champion. An absolute Batman didn't believe in half measures. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Enforcer Station rose before them, a fortified structure built into the industrial framework, its lights harsh against the darkness. Bruce could see guards on patrol, their white armor glinting. Not quite military, corporate security trying to look intimidating. They were about to learn the difference between looking intimidating and facing something that actually was. The Enforcer Station occupied a strategic position where 3 industrial sectors converged, a deliberate choice that let corporate security monitor multiple worker districts simultaneously. Bruce observed it from the shadows for 30 minutes, his engineer's eye cataloging structural weaknesses and security patterns. The building was retrofitted onto existing infrastructure, which meant load-bearing points were predictable. The guards, 23 by his count, rotated in shifts that left gaps in coverage. Amateur hour compared to Gotham's organized crime, but effective enough against an unarmed, exhausted workforce. Jace crouched beside him, nervously checking his salvaged blaster. So what's the plan? You gonna just walk in the front door swinging that axe? No, Bruce said, his eyes tracking a patrol pattern. I'm going through the roof. You three are going to create a distraction at the main entrance, loud, obvious, make them think you're drunk workers looking for trouble. When they commit forces to the front, I go in from above. And then what? Rizzo asked. You take on 20 enforcers alone. 19, Bruce corrected. One stays at the communications console, I saw him through the window. He's first. Cut their ability to call for backup, and they're isolated. He glanced at his reluctant allies. Your job is to make noise, then disappear before they can grab you. I don't need heroes. I need chaos. You keep saying Jace observed. You really gonna do this solo? Bruce's expression was stone. I've been doing this kind of thing solo since I was 20. Just with different architecture. He stood, axe in hand. Give me 5 minutes to get in position. Then start your distraction. He moved through the shadows with practiced efficiency, using the industrial infrastructure's vertical complexity to approach the enforcer station from an angle their security hadn't anticipated. Bruce had grown up navigating Gotham's flooded tunnels and condemned structures. This was just another urban environment, albeit with different physics and architecture. The roof access was predictably weak. A ventilation grate designed for airflow, not security. Bruce's engineer background let him identify the fastening mechanism instantly, different technology, same basic principles. He used his axe blade as a lever, popping the grate with minimal noise. Below, he heard Jace's voice raised in slurred complaint, I think you can just treat us like animals. We got rights. Workers got rights. Move along, an enforcer's voice responded, bored authority in every syllable. You're drunk. Go sleep it off before we cite you for public disturbance. Cite me. Cite me. Jace's performance was better than Bruce expected. I'll show you what I think of your citations. The sound of breaking glass, probably Rizzo throwing a bottle. Shouts. Multiple enforcers moving toward the entrance. Bruce dropped through the ventilation shaft. He landed in a storage area, silent as a shadow despite his size. Through the door, he could hear the communications officer, exactly where Bruce had predicted, monitoring the disturbance at the entrance through security feeds. The man's attention was entirely on the screens, watching his colleagues deal with the drunk workers. Bruce crossed the room in 3 strides. His hand clamped over the officer's mouth while his other arm locked around the man's throat, not killing, but a blood choke that had the enforcer unconscious in seconds. He zip-tied the man's hands with restraints salvaged from his own belt, then turned to the communications console. The technology was alien but comprehensible. Bruce's fingers moved across the controls, his mind parsing out function through logic and observation. There, communications relay. And there, security feeds. He could see the main entrance where Jace and his companions were being herded away by 6 enforcers. Good. That left 17 inside. No, 16. One was walking toward the storage area, probably coming to ask the communications officer something. Bruce positioned himself behind the door, axe ready. When the enforcer entered, Bruce's boot caught him in the solar plexus, a strike that drove all air from the man's lungs. Before he could gasp, Bruce's axe handle swept his legs and the blunt end followed up with a calculated strike to the temple. The enforcer dropped like a puppet with cut strings. 2 down. 16 to go. Bruce moved through the station like a ghost made of violence. He'd learned to fight in Gotham's undercity where fancy martial arts meant nothing. What mattered was ending threats fast, brutal, and permanent enough that they stayed down. Every technique was designed for multiple opponents in close quarters, every movement economy in motion. 3 enforcers guarding the armory. Bruce hit them from behind with the flat of his axe, concussive strikes that left them crumpled on the floor with probable concussions. He'd feel worse about it if he hadn't watched their security feeds showing them beating workers for minor infractions. The armory itself was a treasure trove. Blasters of various types, stun batons crackling with electrical energy, body armor in standardized sizes. Bruce grabbed a blaster, the energy weapon felt lighter than he expected, and tested the trigger. A bolt of red plasma scarred the wall. Point and shoot indeed. He preferred the axe, but tactical advantage meant using every tool available. The alarm finally went off when Bruce encountered 4 enforcers in the main corridor. One got his blaster up fast enough to fire. Bruce rolled, feeling the heat of plasma passing centimeters from his shoulder, and came up swinging. His axe blade bit into the man's weapon, the crude Beskar-reinforced edge shattering the blaster's components in a shower of sparks. The enforcer stared at his destroyed weapon in shock. Bruce's fist removed him from the fight. The other 3 tried to coordinate, but they'd been trained to intimidate workers, not fight someone who'd spent years battling Gotham's most desperate criminals. Bruce moved between them like a wrecking ball in human form, axe handle breaking ribs, boots shattering knees, his raw physicality overwhelming their attempts at defensive formation. "What the hell is this guy?" one enforcer gasped, trying to crawl away. "Someone who's had enough," Bruce growled, and rendered him unconscious with a precisely placed strike. The station's main command center was where the remaining enforcers had fortified. 9 of them, all armed, using desks as cover. Their leader, a human with sergeant's insignia on his armor, aimed a blaster at Bruce as he entered. "I don't know what you are or where you came from," the sergeant said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes, "but you just assaulted corporate security. That's an execution offense. Surrender now, and maybe we only beat you half to death." Bruce stood in the doorway, axe in one hand, stolen blaster in the other, his dark silhouette backlit by sparking equipment he'd destroyed getting here. His breathing was controlled despite the exertion, his stance utterly confident. "You've been beating workers," Bruce said flatly. "Terrorizing people who can't fight back. Making examples of anyone who asks for basic rights." He took a step forward. "I'm here to return the favor." "Open fire," the sergeant screamed. Bruce moved. Not with superhuman speed, he had no powers to draw on, just muscle memory trained through thousands of street fights. But he understood angles, trajectories, and how panic made people shoot badly. He dove behind a overturned desk as plasma bolts scorched the air where he'd been standing. The enforcers had firepower. Bruce had experience fighting when outgunned. It wasn't even close to a fair fight. He'd been in worse. Bruce popped up from cover, his stolen blaster firing with precision at ceiling fixtures. Lights exploded, plunging sections of the command center into darkness. The enforcers' night vision was non-existent. They'd gotten used to well-lit patrols against defenseless workers. Bruce had learned to fight in the absolute black of Gotham's flooded tunnels. He was in his element. The axe found targets by sound, the crack of reinforced handle against armor, the wet thud of impacts against flesh. Bruce's size and strength meant he didn't need killing blows to end fights. A shattered collarbone stopped one enforcer. A broken knee dropped another. His tactical mind kept count, 7 still fighting, 6, 4. The sergeant got off a lucky shot that grazed Bruce's shoulder, pain, burning, but not debilitating. Bruce's return strike with the axe handle sent the sergeant sprawling, his helmet cracked and consciousness gone. Silence fell over the command center except for groaning from injured enforcers. Bruce stood among them, breathing hard now, feeling the burn of exertion in muscles pushed to their limit. His shoulder throbbed where the plasma had scorched it, not a deep wound, but a reminder that this galaxy's weapons were no joke. 23 enforcers. 23 down. None dead. Bruce had been careful about that, measured in his violence despite his rage. They'd wake up with injuries that would take weeks to heal and a lesson learned. There were consequences for abusing power. Bruce moved to the station's external communication system. The interface was still alien, but his engineer's mind had been parsing the logic throughout the fight. He found what he thought was a broadcast function and activated it. This message is for every corporate enforcer, gang enforcer, and hired thug on Nar Shaddaa, Bruce said, his voice amplified across the sector's communication network. You've been terrorizing workers. Beating people who can't fight back. Keeping an entire population afraid because you thought no one would stop you. He paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of receivers. You were wrong. The people in the Undercity aren't alone anymore. They aren't unprotected. And if you come at them again. Bruce's voice went cold as winter. You'll deal with me. He cut the transmission and began gathering intelligence from the station's computers. Files on worker agitators. Records of beatings. Evidence of coordination with the Hutt cartel and even Imperial authorities. Bruce downloaded everything to a data chip he'd scavenged. Information was as much a weapon as his axe. Jace, Rizzo, and their companion found him 10 minutes later, staring at the aftermath. You actually did it, Jace breathed, looking at the unconscious enforcers scattered across the command center. One man. With an axe. Not just me, Bruce said, turning to face them. He tossed Jace a data chip. I had help. And I'm going to need more. He gestured to the captured equipment and files. This station documented every worker they've targeted. Every union organizer they've beaten. Every person who tried to stand up for basic rights. We're going to find those people. Why? Rizzo asked. Because they're already leaders, Bruce explained, his tactical mind working 3 moves ahead. They've already proven they're willing to stand up despite the consequences. We find them, organize them, and give them the tools to fight back. He looked at the 3 former muggers who'd become his first allies in this strange galaxy. You said there's millions in the Undercity. That's not a weakness. That's an army waiting to happen. You're talking about revolution, Jace said slowly. I'm talking about basic rights, Bruce corrected. The right not to be beaten for asking for fair treatment. The right to organize. The right to say no to those who've been crushing you. His expression hardened. But if the corporate interests and criminal organizations want to call that revolution? Fine. Let's give them a revolution. The Hutts will retaliate, Rizzo warned. So will Imperial authorities. You just kicked a hornet's nest. Good, Bruce said simply. Let them come. Let them commit resources and attention down here. Because every enforcer they send to the Undercity is one less oppressing people somewhere else. And every time they retaliate against workers. He hefted his axe. They'll have to go through me first. He started walking toward the exit, then paused. One more thing. I need someone who understands this galaxy's technology. Someone who can teach me how this equipment works, how to modify it, how to build things from salvage. Why? Jace asked. Because I'm an engineer, Bruce replied. And if I'm going to fight in this galaxy, I need to understand its tools. He looked at the damaged station around them. In my world, I learned to build from scraps because I didn't have resources. Looks like I'm starting from the same position here. That's fine. I've done it before. News of the Enforcer Station attack spread through Nar Shaddaa's Undercity like wildfire. Workers whispered about the Bat Demon, a massive figure who'd torn through corporate security with an ancient weapon, who'd broadcast a message of protection across the sector's communication networks. Some said he was an off-world warrior. Others claimed he was something darker, punishment manifest for the guilty. In the Hutt cartel's palace levels, crime lords heard the reports with initial amusement that quickly turned to concern. One enforcer station wasn't significant, but the message was. Someone was organizing workers, making them think they could resist. In Imperial administrative offices, analysts flagged the incident as potentially related to rebel activity. Investigations were ordered. Inquiries were made. And in the depths of the Undercity, in a salvage yard workshop where Jace's cousin worked repairing industrial equipment, Bruce Wayne studied alien technology with the focused intensity of someone learning a new language. This power coupling runs on plasma-based energy transfer, the mechanic, a Celestin named Poro, explained, showing Bruce the inner workings of a blaster. You modulate the particle beam through these focusing crystals, and the trigger mechanism releases the magnetic containment. Like a railgun but with plasma instead of solid projectiles, Bruce interrupted, his engineer's mind making connections. The crystals focused the beam to prevent dispersal. If you modified the crystal array, you could theoretically change the beam's properties, wider dispersal for less penetration, or tighter focus for armor penetration. Poro stared at him. That, yes. Exactly. How did you? Physics is physics, Bruce said, already sketching modifications on a datapad. The technology's different, but the principles are universal. Energy, force, trajectory, they work the same everywhere. He looked up. Can you get me more salvage? Broken equipment, failed tech, anything the factories discard. The scrap yards are full of it, Poro said. But what are you planning? Bruce's expression was grim. The enforcers will be back. So will Hutt mercenaries and whoever else wants to crush what we're building. When they come, I need to be ready. He hefted a damaged blaster, already envisioning modifications. I fought in my world with scraps and salvage. Time to learn what this galaxy's scraps can do. Over the next 3 days, Bruce Wayne became a ghost in Nar Shaddaa's industrial depths. He moved through the Undercity's vertical maze, making contact with the workers that corporate security had flagged as troublemakers. Union organizers who'd been beaten but not broken. Engineers who'd been blacklisted for speaking up. Teachers who tried to educate workers' children about their rights. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Bruce would appear from shadows, his presence imposing but not threatening to those who had nothing to fear from him. He'd share the intelligence he'd gathered from the enforcer station. He'd explain his vision, not a traditional revolution with manifestos and political theory, but something simpler, mutual protection, collective resistance, and the understanding that those who'd been divided could choose to stand together. Some refused, too beaten down by years of oppression to believe change was possible. But many, so many, had just been waiting for someone to show them that resistance wasn't suicide. You're asking us to fight, a Twi'lek union organizer named Yara said during one midnight meeting. But we're factory workers, dock laborers, waste processors. We're not soldiers. Neither was I, Bruce replied. I was a city engineer who got tired of watching people suffer. You don't need military training to stand up for yourselves. You just need to stop being afraid. Easy to say when you took down 23 enforcers alone, Yara pointed out. I didn't come here to fight your battles for you, Bruce said bluntly. I came to show you that battles can be fought. The rest is up to you. He pulled out a crude map of the Undercity sectors. But if you're willing to organize, I can teach you tactics. Show you how to defend your communities. Help you build from resources the galaxy's already thrown away. And when the Hutts send an army? Yara challenged. When Imperial stormtroopers come because we're disrupting production quotas? Bruce's smile was cold. Then they'll learn what happens when they push people who have nothing left to lose. By the end of the 3rd day, Bruce had connected with 17 different worker groups across the Undercity. Not an army, not yet. But the foundation of something that could become one. A network of people who'd been isolated now talking to each other, sharing resources, watching each other's backs. It was how revolutions started. Not with grand declarations, but with people deciding they'd had enough. In his makeshift workshop, a salvage yard that Poro had given him access to, Bruce worked on modifications to his equipment. His axe remained his primary weapon, but he'd reinforced the handle with salvaged durasteel and integrated a small plasma cutter into the blade's back edge. Not elegant, but effective for cutting through the heavier armor this galaxy's combatants wore. His clothing had been upgraded with scavenged armor plates, not full protection, but enough to deflect glancing shots. He'd built a crude grappling system using industrial cable and a magnetic launcher. It was heavy, imprecise compared to what his counterpart in other universes might have, but it worked. Most importantly, he'd begun assembling a symbol. In Gotham, the bat had been about fear, making criminals paranoid, giving hope to victims. Here, he needed something similar but different. Not a bat, that mythology didn't exist in this galaxy. But something that conveyed the same message, justice from the shadows, protection for the forgotten. He'd welded together scrap metal into a crude chest piece that vaguely resembled wings spread in defiance. Not sophisticated, but visible. Recognizable. A sign that someone was watching, someone was protecting, someone gave a damn about the people everyone else had discarded. "You're building a costume," Jace observed, watching Bruce work. "I'm building a symbol," Bruce corrected, adjusting the fit. "People need to know who's on their side. Need to see someone standing between them and those who'd hurt them. In my experience, people with symbols usually want something in return," Jace said carefully. "Power. Control. Loyalty." Bruce looked at him directly. "I want you to not get beaten by thugs for asking for fair treatment. That's it. If that requires building a symbol to make it happen, then that's what I'll build." A alert chimed on the salvaged communications device Bruce had rigged. Rizzo's voice crackled through. "Bruce. We've got a problem. Big one. Hutt enforcers just grabbed Yara and 3 other organizers. They're being taken to the cartel processing center. That's where they interrogate people before deciding whether to execute them or sell them into slavery." Bruce was already moving, grabbing his axe and the modified equipment. "How long?" "Transport left 10 minutes ago. You've got maybe 20 minutes before they arrive at the processing center." "Then I've got 20 minutes, Bruce said, his voice cold with purpose. "Send me the coordinates." Jace grabbed a blaster. "I'm coming with you." "This isn't like the enforcer station," Bruce warned. "Hutt cartel means serious criminals. Professional thugs. They'll shoot to kill. Good thing I'm getting used to fighting alongside someone who's terrible at dying," Jace replied. "Besides, Yara's one of us. We don't abandon our own." Bruce paused, then nodded. "Get 3 more. People who can shoot straight and won't panic. We're doing this fast and brutal, hit them before they know we're there, extract the prisoners, disappear before reinforcements arrive." "That's insane," Jace said. "Welcome to my normal Tuesday," Bruce replied, and headed for the exit. Nar Shaddaa's artificial night had fallen, the megacity's light pollution creating perpetual twilight in the Undercity. Bruce moved through the vertical maze with growing confidence, his engineer's mind having mapped the sector's structure over 3 days of exploration. The Hutt Processing Center was a fortified warehouse built into the industrial framework, 3 stories of reinforced structure with 1 main entrance and minimal windows. 20 guards by Bruce's observation, all better armed than corporate security had been. 4 of us against 20 Hutt enforcers, Rizzo muttered, crouched beside Bruce on an overlooking gantry. "This is suicide." "No," Bruce said, studying the structure with tactical intensity. "This is shock and violence applied to the right pressure points." He pointed. "Entry team, you, me, Jace. We hit the main entrance hard and fast, maximum chaos. Poro, you're our exit strategy. Get one of those industrial loading vehicles running and position it at the east side access. We'll extract the prisoners that way." "You have this all planned out," Jace observed. "I've been doing extractions from hostile territory since I was 22, Bruce replied. "Different city, same principles." He hefted his axe. "Remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to create enough chaos to grab 4 people and disappear. Precision beats power when you're outnumbered. Any other advice?" Rizzo asked nervously. Bruce's expression was stone. "Don't die. I don't know this galaxy well enough to give eulogies yet. He dropped from the gantry, using his crude grappling system to control his descent, and hit the warehouse entrance with the subtlety of an industrial accident. The improvised explosive he'd built from salvaged power cells and volatile chemicals, unstable, dangerous, exactly what a desperate engineer would create, blew the front door into shrapnel. Before the Hutt enforcers could react, Bruce was through the smoke, his axe already swinging. The first enforcer, some kind of scaled reptilian species, took the axe handle across his snout with enough force to drop him instantly. The second tried to draw a blaster and found Bruce's boot collapsing his knee before the weapon cleared its holster. Jace and Rizzo came through behind him, their blasters firing with more enthusiasm than precision. But precision wasn't the point, chaos was. Make the enemy react instead of act. Force them into defensive positions. Create opportunities. Prisoners. Bruce roared over the alarm klaxons. Where? A Rodian enforcer, bleeding from a head wound Bruce had just given him, gestured desperately toward stairs leading down. Basement. Interrogation rooms. Don't kill me. Bruce didn't kill him. Just ensured he wouldn't be getting up for a while. Then he was moving, taking stairs 3 at a time, his allies struggling to keep pace. The basement interrogation level was exactly what Bruce expected, bare metal rooms designed for suffering. He found Yara and the 3 other organizers in the third room, bound to chairs, already showing signs of beating. You, Yara gasped, staring at Bruce through a swollen eye. You actually came. Said I would protect you, Bruce replied, using his axe blade to cut their bonds. Now move. We've got maybe 2 minutes before reinforcements arrive. They ran. Not gracefully, the prisoners were injured, stumbling, but with desperate speed. Behind them, Hutt enforcers were reorganizing, their initial shock wearing off. Blaster fire filled the narrow corridors, forcing Bruce to play rear guard, his axe deflecting bolts that would have hit fleeing prisoners. He took a shot to his makeshift armor, the plasma burned through the outer layer but the underlying plates held. Pain, but not critical. He kept moving. Poro had the industrial loader positioned perfectly. Bruce's group piled in, and the vehicle lurched forward with agonizing slowness. Blaster fire hammered its back panel. Go! Bruce shouted. Ram anything in our way. The loader smashed through a checkpoint barrier, then accelerated into the Undercity's maze of passages. Behind them, Hutt enforcers scrambled to organize pursuit, but Bruce had chosen the exit route carefully, through sections too narrow for pursuit vehicles, too complex for easy tracking. 10 minutes later, in a different sector entirely, they stopped. Everyone was breathing hard, adrenaline still flooding systems. You're completely insane, Yara said to Bruce, still in shock. The Hutts will retaliate. They'll come after all of us. Let them, Bruce replied. Every enforcer they send after us is one less oppressing someone else. And next time, we'll be ready. He looked at the rescued organizers. You're leaders. People look to you. Now you need to decide, keep your heads down and hope the Hutts forget about you, or stand up and show the Undercity that resistance is possible. You're asking us to declare war, one of the other organizers said. I'm asking you to defend yourselves, Bruce corrected. The war was already happening. You were just on the losing side because you were fighting alone. He gestured to the group around them. Now you're not alone. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Yara looked at her fellow organizers, then back at Bruce. Teach us. Show us how to fight. How to protect ourselves. How to build what you're building. Bruce nodded slowly. Then we start tomorrow. And we start by making sure every worker in this sector knows they have options besides submission. In a luxury apartment kilometers above the Undercity, a Hutt crime lord listened to reports about the warehouse attack with growing anger. This wasn't random violence. This was organization. Strategy. Someone was building something in the depths, someone who understood warfare. The Hutt issued orders, find this Bat Demon. Find him and make an example that the entire Undercity would never forget. In Imperial administrative offices, analysts continued flagging incidents in Nar Shaddaa's lower levels. The pattern suggested professional insurgent activity, not random criminal disruption. An official recommendation was made, investigate possible rebel alliance involvement. And in the depths of the Undercity, in a salvage yard workshop, Bruce Wayne worked on equipment modifications while Jace, Rizzo, Yara, and dozen others watched and learned. You're teaching us to be like you, Jace observed. No, Bruce corrected. I'm teaching you to be like you. I'm just showing you that it's possible to fight back. He held up a modified blaster. The galaxy's thrown away enough equipment that if you know how to rebuild it, you can arm yourselves. Enough industrial equipment down here that if you know how to use it, you can defend your sectors. Enough people that if you organize them. He paused. The powerful stay in power because the powerless accept it. Time to stop accepting. Is this what you did in your world? Yara asked. Bruce was silent for a moment, thinking about Gotham. About the flooded levels. About the years spent fighting to protect people the city above had forgotten. Yes, he said finally. And I'll do it here too. For as long as it takes. The Undercity rebellion was beginning. Not with manifestos or political philosophy, but with something simpler and more dangerous, people who'd been beaten down learning they could stand up. And at the center of it, forging tools from the galaxy's discarded scraps, stood Bruce Wayne, engineer, vigilante, and the champion the Forgotten had been waiting for. The Bat Demon of Nar Shaddaa had arrived. And he was teaching the Undercity how to fight back. 3 weeks after Bruce Wayne's arrival on Nar Shaddaa, the Undercity had changed in ways that made the Hutt cartel nervous and Imperial administrators deeply concerned. What had started as isolated incidents, an enforcer station taken down, a prisoner extraction, had evolved into something far more organized and dangerous. Bruce stood on a gantry overlooking Sector 47's main industrial floor, watching workers move with purpose that hadn't existed a month ago. They still labored in the factories, stopping work entirely would have brought immediate Imperial crackdown, but now they moved with awareness, with communication networks, with the knowledge that they weren't alone. Shift rotation in 5 minutes, Jace reported, climbing up to join him. Third group is ready for training. Yara's handling the technical instruction while Poro teaches equipment modification. Bruce nodded, still watching the workers below. His engineer's mind constantly analyzed the industrial infrastructure, identifying pressure points and tactical advantages. How many now? 417 in the active network, Jace said, consulting a datapad. Another 1,000 who know about us but haven't committed. Maybe 10,000 who've heard rumors but think we're a myth. He paused. The Hutts are offering bounties. 50,000 credits for information leading to the Bat Demon. Double that for actual capture. Good, Bruce said flatly. Means we're threatening them enough to spend resources. Every credit they offer is a credit they're not using to oppress workers elsewhere. That's one way to look at it, Jace muttered. Another way is that we've got every bounty hunter in 3 sectors looking for us. Bruce finally turned to look at him. Then we need to be harder to find. And more dangerous to approach. He gestured to the industrial floor. How's the defense network? 63 hardpoints established across 4 sectors, Jace reported. Modified industrial equipment, scavenged weapons, improvised explosives. Nothing sophisticated, but it'll make any assault costly. He hesitated. Bruce, we're building something that looks a lot like an army. The Empire doesn't ignore armies. We're building a defense force, Bruce corrected. There's a difference. We're not attacking Imperial installations or disrupting their operations. We're protecting workers from criminals and corporate thugs who the Empire ignores anyway. You think the Empire will see that distinction? I think the Empire has bigger problems than some workers defending themselves in the Outer Rim, Bruce said. But if they do decide we're worth their attention. His hand moved to the modified axe on his back. I've been working on something for that scenario. Before Jace could respond, alarms blared across the sector, not Imperial or Hutt, but the improvised warning system Bruce's network had established. 3 sharp pulses meant hostile force incoming. Bruce's communicator crackled. Rizzo's voice, strained, east entrance. Mandalorian bounty hunters. 4 of them. Professional gear, heavy weapons. They're asking for you by name. Mandalorian. Bruce had heard the term during his 3 weeks of learning galactic context. Warrior culture, elite combat training, armor made from something called Beskar that was supposedly nearly indestructible. Exactly the kind of professionals the Hutts would hire when normal enforcers kept failing. Tell them I'm coming, Bruce said into the communicator. Everyone else, defensive positions. Do not engage unless they attack workers. These are professionals, let me handle it. Bruce, Jace started. I said I'd protect you, Bruce interrupted. That means I deal with the threats you can't. He was already moving toward the east entrance, his modified axe in hand. Besides, I've been meaning to test some upgrades. The Mandalorians waited at the sector's main access point, their armor gleaming even in the Undercity's dim lighting. 4 warriors, each bearing weapons that screamed professional-grade military hardware. Their helmets, T-visors that had become iconic across the galaxy, turned to track Bruce as he approached. The leader, his armor painted in dark red and gray, stepped forward. You're the one they call Bat-Demon. The one who's been disrupting Hutt operations. I'm someone who doesn't like bullies, Bruce replied, stopping 10 meters away. His tactical mind was already cataloging their gear, identifying weapon types, calculating angles of attack. You're Mandalorian. Heard you're supposed to be honorable warriors. What are you doing working for slavers? We're bounty hunters, the Mandalorian said. We work for whoever pays. The Hutts have offered substantial credits for your capture. He paused. But we've also heard what you're doing down here. Organizing workers. Fighting corporate security. Standing against the cartel. There was something like respect in his filtered voice. That takes courage. Or insanity. Sometimes both. So which is it? Bruce asked. You here to talk or fight? Depends, the Mandalorian replied. We've been watching you for 3 days. Studying your operations. You fight like someone with military training, but your tactics are unconventional. Street-level combat mixed with asymmetric warfare strategy. And that weapon, he nodded to Bruce's axe, is completely anachronistic for this era. Where are you from? Somewhere that taught me tyrants need to be challenged, Bruce said. And that sometimes the only language bullies understand is violence. He shifted his stance slightly, weight balanced for rapid movement. Now. You came for a bounty. Are you taking it? The Mandalorian was silent for a long moment. Then, my name is Kale Rook. These are my clanmates. He gestured to the other 3 warriors. We took the Hutt contract because the money was good. But we've spent 3 days observing, and we've seen something interesting. What's that? You're not a criminal, Kale said. You're a warrior fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. That's something Mandalorians understand. He paused. The Hutts want you captured alive. They want to make an example, probably torture you publicly to terrify the workers back into submission. We could deliver you and collect our credits. Another pause. Or we could refuse the contract on the grounds that it dishonors our warrior code to hunt someone engaged in legitimate defense of their people. Bruce studied them carefully, his tactical mind assessing sincerity. And the real reason? Kale's helmet tilted slightly, body language that transcended species. The real reason is that the Hutts are slavers and worse. Many Mandalorians refuse contracts from them on principle. I'm one of those Mandalorians. He took a step forward. But there's something else. Your combat style, your equipment, your tactical approach, it's all improvised, salvaged, built from nothing. That's warrior thinking. Mandalorian thinking. So you're walking away? Bruce asked, still wary. We're considering an alternative proposal, Kale said. You're fighting with primitive equipment against enemies with advanced technology. You're learning this galaxy's warfare on the fly, making mistakes that will eventually get you killed. And when you die, whatever you've built here dies with you. He gestured to his armor. Mandalorians have been perfecting combat for thousands of years. We know weapons, armor, tactics. Things you need to learn if you're going to survive. Bruce's eyes narrowed. You're offering to train me. I'm offering an exchange, Kale corrected. You teach us your unconventional tactics, the street-level combat and asymmetric strategies that clearly work against superior numbers. We teach you Mandalorian warfare, weapons, armor, hand-to-hand techniques refined over millennia. Both sides benefit. And the Hutt bounty? We'll tell them you're too dangerous to take alive without heavy casualties, Kale said. Which is true. They'll hire other hunters, but we'll have bought you time. He paused. And perhaps some of those hunters will also decide that fighting someone defending the helpless isn't the kind of contract they want. Bruce was silent, weighing options with the tactical precision he'd honed over years of vigilante work. Trust was always a risk, but tactical alliances had value. And Kale was right, he was learning this galaxy's combat through trial and error, making mistakes that experience could prevent. One condition, Bruce said finally. Your training extends to my people. Not just me, the workers I'm organizing. They need to know how to defend themselves. Kale considered this, then nodded. Agreed. Though most won't have the discipline for full Mandalorian training. We'll teach basics, enough to make them dangerous in defensive situations. That's all I need, Bruce said. He extended his hand, a gesture he hoped translated across cultures. Deal. Kale clasped his forearm instead, apparently the Mandalorian equivalent. Deal. Though I should warn you, Mandalorian training isn't gentle. We believe in learning through pain. Bruce's smile was grim. I learned to fight in flooded tunnels against desperate criminals. Pain's an old friend. Over the next 2 weeks, Bruce Wayne learned why Mandalorians had a reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous warriors. Kale and his clanmates were ruthless instructors, pushing Bruce to his physical limits while teaching techniques refined over thousands of years of warfare. Your axe technique is effective but wasteful, Kale observed during a sparring session, easily blocking Bruce's strike with a Beskar bracer. Too much wind-up, too much committed motion. In close quarters against multiple opponents, you'll tire yourself out. He demonstrated a more efficient strike pattern. Mandalorian combat is about energy economy. Every movement serves dual purpose, defense and offense simultaneously. Bruce absorbed the lesson, his body adapting to the new techniques with the muscle memory built from years of training. But he also pushed back, showing the Mandalorians his street-fighting methodology. You're too linear, Bruce countered during a different session. Your techniques assume opponents will fight with honor, follow patterns. Street criminals don't. They bite, gouge, use environment as weapons. You need to account for chaos. Chaos is inefficient, one of Kale's clanmates argued. Chaos is realistic, Bruce replied. Show me a real fight that follows neat patterns. In the streets, in the undercities, fights are desperate and unpredictable. Your techniques need to adapt. The exchange became mutual education. Mandalorians learned Bruce's unpredictable, environment-focused combat style. Bruce learned their efficient, economical warfare techniques. Both sides grew more dangerous. But the most valuable lessons came from equipment modification. Mandalorian armor wasn't just protective gear, it was a comprehensive weapons platform, integrated systems that enhanced the warrior wearing it. Beskar is the ultimate armor material, Kale explained, showing Bruce a piece of the legendary metal. Lightsaber resistant, blaster proof, nearly indestructible. But it's rare and expensive. You'll never afford enough to make full armor. Don't need full armor, Bruce replied, his engineer's mind already working on designs. Just need strategic placement. Vital areas, vulnerable points. He sketched rapidly. If I integrate small Beskar plates into salvaged armor, reinforce with Durasteel framework, I can create something that balances protection with mobility. That's actually intelligent design, Kale admitted, studying the sketches. Unorthodox, but effective. You think like an engineer. I am an engineer, Bruce said. Was, anyway. Before I became this. He gestured to himself, the crude armor, the modified weapons, the symbol he'd built from scrap. What made you change? Kale asked. Bruce was silent for a long moment, thinking about Gotham. About the flooded levels. About the night he decided he was done watching people suffer while he designed buildings above them. I got tired of building things for people who didn't care about the ones suffering below them, he said finally. Decided to use my skills for something that mattered. That's the Mandalorian way, Kale said with approval. Skills in service of protection. Strength used to defend the weak. He clasped Bruce's shoulder. You're already halfway to being Mandoade. You just need the armor. While Bruce trained with the Mandalorians, the Undercity network continued growing. Yara had established communication systems across 7 sectors. Poro had set up 3 additional workshops where workers learned to modify salvaged equipment. Rizzo coordinated defensive positions, creating a web of hardpoints that would make any assault costly. But growth brought attention. The kind of attention Bruce had been anticipating and dreading. Imperial intelligence had been monitoring Nar Shaddaa's Undercity incidents with increasing concern. What had initially been dismissed as criminal activity now showed clear patterns of organization, tactical sophistication, and, most troubling, effectiveness. An analyst named Lieutenant Vara had compiled reports into a comprehensive briefing that eventually reached higher authority. That authority was an Inquisitor. The Inquisitors were the Empire's Force-sensitive enforcers, trained to hunt Jedi survivors and crush resistance movements before they could threaten Imperial order. Most focused on tracking Force users, but some specialized in conventional insurgencies. 10th Brother was one such specialist. A former Republic military officer who'd been recruited into the Inquisitorius after Order 66, he combined military tactical thinking with Force-enhanced interrogation and combat capabilities. When Lieutenant Vara's briefing reached his desk, 10th Brother recognized immediately what he was seeing. This is not random criminal disruption, he told the Imperial administrators on Nar Shaddaa. This is organized resistance with military-level coordination. Someone with professional training is building an insurgent network in your Undercity. We've increased security patrols, the administrator protested. Coordinated with Hutt cartel enforcement. Which has accomplished nothing except demonstrating your incompetence, 10th Brother interrupted coldly. I will handle this personally. Prepare an assault force, stormtroopers, heavy weapons, interrogation equipment. We will crush this insurgency and make an example that ensures compliance for decades. The Undercity has millions of workers, another administrator warned. If we come down too hard, we risk disrupting production across multiple sectors. Then the workers will learn to produce despite their fear, 10th Brother said. The Emperor's doctrine is clear, rule through fear. The Undercity has forgotten what it means to fear Imperial authority. I will remind them. Bruce learned about the Imperial assault 3 days before it was scheduled to launch. One of his network's contacts, a worker who had family employed in Imperial administrative offices, overheard planning discussions and passed the information along. 300 stormtroopers, Bruce said, studying the intelligence in his workshop. Heavy weapons, armored transports, and an Inquisitor leading them. They're coming to make an example. We can't fight that, Yara said, fear evident in her voice. 300 trained soldiers. We've got maybe 60 people with actual combat experience and another 300 who know how to point a blaster. This isn't a battle we can win. Then we don't fight it, Bruce replied, his tactical mind already working through alternatives. We evacuate. Get everyone in the network out of Sector 47 before the assault. Scatter across the Undercity where they can't track us. Let the Empire attack an empty position. They'll destroy everything we've built, Rizzo objected. The workshops, the defensive positions, the equipment. Equipment can be rebuilt, Bruce said. People can't. He looked at each of them. I didn't start this to fight a conventional war against the Empire. I started this to protect workers from exploitation. If protecting them now means tactical retreat, we retreat. And then what? Jace asked. We just hide while the Empire tears apart the Undercity looking for us. No, Bruce said, and his smile was cold. We let them commit forces to hunting us, then we make it costly enough that they reconsider whether we're worth the effort. He turned to Kale, who'd been observing quietly. You said Mandalorian warfare teaches energy economy. Time to apply that lesson. We can't beat 300 stormtroopers in direct combat, but we can bleed them in ambushes, harassment, hit-and-run attacks that make every meter they advance cost them casualties. Guerrilla warfare, Kale said with approval. Use the terrain, strike from unexpected angles, never commit to sustained engagement. Classic asymmetric tactics. I prefer street fighting elevated to military scale, Bruce replied. But yeah. We turn the Undercity into a maze where every intersection is a potential ambush, every vertical level a new angle of attack. Force them to commit overwhelming resources for minimal gain. They'll kill civilians trying to flush us out, Yara warned. Which is why we evacuate civilians first, Bruce said. Everyone in the network, their families, anyone associated with us, we get them out of probable target zones before the Empire arrives. Temporarily relocate them to sectors the Empire isn't focusing on. That's thousands of people, Rizzo said. How do we move that many without being noticed? We use what this galaxy already has, cargo systems, maintenance tunnels, vertical transport networks, Bruce explained, his engineer's mind having mapped every route over weeks of exploration. The Undercity is massive, and Imperial intelligence is focused on Sector 47. We move people through adjacent sectors, disguised as normal worker migration. Slow, methodical, invisible. And when the Empire realizes we've evacuated? Jace asked. Bruce's expression hardened. Then they'll realize they're fighting ghosts. And ghosts are very hard to kill. The evacuation took 2 days of careful coordination. Families relocated with only what they could carry, moving through the Undercity's labyrinthine infrastructure in small groups that wouldn't attract attention. Workers shifted between factories as if following normal employment patterns. Children were sent to relatives in distant sectors. By the time the Imperial assault force arrived, Sector 47 was a ghost town. 10th Brother stood in the empty industrial sector, his force senses detecting only scattered life signs where intelligence had indicated thousands of insurgents. His lightsaber remained unignited, but his fury was palpable. They knew we were coming, he said coldly to the stormtrooper commander beside him. Someone leaked our operational plans. Sir, we conducted security sweeps. Which were obviously insufficient, 10th Brother interrupted. He extended his senses through the force, searching for traces of the network's leadership. There, faint signatures, deliberately left. Not force users, but presences that stood out through sheer determination and focused will. The insurgent leader was taunting him. They haven't fled the Undercity, 10th Brother concluded. They've simply repositioned. Clever. He turned to the stormtrooper commander. Begin systematic sweeps of adjacent sectors. I want patrols in force, checkpoints at every major intersection, surveillance on all vertical transport. This insurgent network will need supplies, communication, resources. Find their supply lines and we'll find them. That will require significant troop deployment across dozens of sectors, sir, the commander warned. Then deploy them, 10th Brother commanded. The Emperor has made clear that insurgencies must be crushed completely. I will not return to Coruscant having failed to eliminate a resistance movement in its infancy. The imperial occupation of Nar Shaddaa's undercity began in earnest. Stormtroopers established checkpoints. Patrols swept through worker districts. Anyone suspected of association with the Bat Demons network was detained for interrogation. It lasted exactly 6 hours before Bruce's network struck back. The first patrol, 12 stormtroopers moving through a maintenance corridor in Sector 51, simply disappeared. No distress calls, no blaster fire, nothing. They were there one moment, and gone the next. When reinforcements arrived, they found the patrol unconscious, stripped of weapons and communication equipment, with a message burned into the wall with a plasma cutter. You're hunting shadows. Shadows don't lose. The second incident was a checkpoint ambush. Stormtroopers manning an intersection control point found themselves under fire from 3 directions simultaneously, quick, precise bursts from modified blasters, then silence. By the time reinforcements arrived, the attackers were gone, leaving behind disabled equipment and more unconscious troopers. 10th Brother studied the attack patterns with growing respect mixed with frustration. They're not trying to kill, he observed. Every engagement is disable and disappear. Minimal casualties on both sides. Is that relevant, sir? The stormtrooper commander asked. Very, 10th Brother replied. It tells us about their leader's psychology. He's trying to make a point, not wage war. He wants to prove the Empire can't control the Undercity, but he's not ready to escalate to lethal conflict. The Inquisitor's expression behind his mask was calculating. That gives us leverage. If we increase pressure on civilians, force him to choose between protecting them and maintaining his non-lethal approach. Sir, intentionally targeting civilians is standard Imperial doctrine when dealing with insurgencies, 10th Brother finished coldly. These workers harbor the insurgents. They provide supplies, shelter, information. That makes them legitimate targets. Begin detaining workers for interrogation. If they don't cooperate, make examples. Eventually, the insurgent leader will be forced to reveal himself to protect them. But 10th Brother had made a critical miscalculation. He'd assumed Bruce Wayne's non-lethal approach came from weakness or idealism. He hadn't understood that it came from tactical calculation. Bruce had been trying to avoid giving the Empire justification for escalation. When Imperial stormtroopers began dragging workers from their homes for interrogation, when public beatings started in worker districts, when the message became clear that cooperation with the Bat Demon would be punished with torture and execution, Bruce's tactical calculations changed. They're killing people, Jace reported during an emergency meeting in one of their hidden safehouses. 5 workers executed this morning for refusing to cooperate with legitimate Imperial authority. They're not even pretending it's about security anymore, they're trying to terrorize everyone into submission. Bruce stood silently, his hands clenched into fists. He'd been trying to protect these people. Every decision had been aimed at keeping casualties minimal, avoiding escalation that would bring overwhelming Imperial retaliation. But the Empire had escalated anyway. We need to respond, Yara said, her voice shaking with rage and grief. They're killing our people. We can't just hide. She's right, Rizzo added. If we don't do something, everyone will think we abandoned them. The network will collapse. Bruce looked at Kale, who'd been training his people for weeks now. Mandalorian perspective. What would your people do? Mandalorians believe in proportional response, Kale said carefully. But also in protecting our own. The Empire has crossed a line, they're not just hunting insurgents, they're terrorizing civilians. In Mandalorian culture, that demands answer. Define answer, Bruce said. Kale's T-visor turned to face him directly. They've killed your people. Traditional Mandalorian response would be to kill theirs. Not civilians, warriors. Make it clear that targeting the helpless has consequences. Bruce was silent for a long moment. Everything in him resisted killing. It was a line he tried never to cross in Gotham, a boundary that separated him from the criminals he fought. But Gotham had been one city. This was a galaxy-spanning empire that ruled through fear and overwhelming violence. And they were killing people he'd promised to protect. The Inquisitor, Bruce said finally. He's giving the orders. If we remove him, does the assault continue? Possibly, Kale said. But without force-sensitive leadership, it becomes conventional military operation. Easier to predict, easier to counter. Then that's the target, Bruce decided. We evacuate more civilians out of Imperial patrol zones. We continue hit-and-run attacks on their supply lines and isolated patrols, non-lethal where possible. But the Inquisitor. His voice went cold. He made this personal when he started executing workers. That gets a personal response. You're talking about assassinating an Imperial Inquisitor, Yara said. They're Force users. They carry lightsabers. They're trained to kill Jedi. And you're someone who's very good at fighting people who underestimate him, Bruce interrupted. The Inquisitor thinks I'm a conventional insurgent playing at Revolution. He doesn't know what I am or where I come from. That's an advantage. It's suicide, Jace objected. Maybe, Bruce acknowledged. But it's necessary suicide. The Empire escalated. If we don't respond in kind, they'll conclude that terror works, that they can kill with impunity. We need to show them that there are consequences. He looked at each of them. I'm not ordering anyone to help with this. It's dangerous, probably fatal. But I'm going after the Inquisitor. With or without support. Kale stepped forward. You have Mandalorian support. This is the kind of hunt our people respect, dangerous target, clear objective, defense of the helpless. We're in. Me too, Yara said. He killed my cousin yesterday. I want him to pay. One by one, the others volunteered. Not all of Bruce's network, many were too afraid, too inexperienced, or had families to protect. But enough. Enough to make it possible. Then we planned this carefully, Bruce said, turning to a crude holographic display showing the Undercity's layout. The Inquisitor is based in the Imperial Command Center, surrounded by hundreds of stormtroopers. We can't assault that. But he patrols, leads sweeps personally, probably trying to draw me out. That's when we hit him. You're thinking ambush, Kale said, studying the display. I'm thinking execution, Bruce corrected. He wants me. He'll get me. But on my terms, in terrain I choose, with every advantage I can create. His expression was stone. The Empire thinks the Undercity is a place they can control. Time to show them it's a place where their authority means nothing. 10th Brother sensed the trap before he saw it. He was leading a patrol through Sector 53's maintenance level when his force senses screamed warning, not of immediate danger, but of focused will, of determination so intense it burned in the force like a beacon. The insurgent leader. Finally. Defensive formation, 10th Brother commanded his stormtrooper escort. The target is near. He ignited his lightsaber, the red blade casting harsh light across the industrial corridor. Come out, insurgent. Face Imperial justice. Justice? Bruce's voice echoed from the shadows above. You executed 5 workers yesterday. Beat a dozen more. Terrorized families because they wouldn't betray their neighbors. His silhouette appeared on a gantry overlooking the patrol, massive, backlit, axe in hand. You call that justice? I call it necessary deterrence, 10th Brother replied. The Empire cannot tolerate insurgency. Those workers sheltered enemies of the state. They paid the price. He studied the figure above, no force presence, but something else. Raw determination that registered as pressure in the Force. Surrender now, and I'll ensure your execution is swift. Resist, and I'll make you watch as I execute everyone associated with your network. You talk a lot, Bruce observed. Let's see if you fight as well. He dropped from the gantry, not falling but controlled descent using his crude grappling system, and hit the corridor floor between 10th Brother and his stormtrooper escort. Before the troopers could react, the maintenance corridor's ceiling collapsed, charges Bruce had spent days placing, timed perfectly to separate the Inquisitor from his protection. 10th Brother was alone with Bruce in a sealed section of corridor, tons of rubble blocking reinforcement from either direction. Clever, the Inquisitor admitted, his lightsaber raised. But ultimately futile. You're not Force-sensitive. You carry a primitive weapon. You cannot possibly. Bruce moved. Not with Force-enhanced speed, but with the brutal efficiency of someone who'd been fighting since he was 20 and had learned that speed came from economy of motion. His axe swung in a pattern Kale had drilled into him, multiple feints, attack from unexpected angle, use the opponent's expectations against them. The lightsaber intercepted the axe blade, and for an instant, ancient metal met plasma. The axe, reinforced with Beskar plates and modified with techniques Bruce had learned from Poro, held. The lightsaber couldn't cut it. 10th Brother's surprise cost him. Bruce's boot caught his knee, and suddenly the Inquisitor was off balance. A follow-up strike with the axe handle knocked the lightsaber from his grip, sending it clattering across the corridor. The Inquisitor used the Force, hurling debris at Bruce with telekinetic power. Bruce rolled, took impacts on his salvaged armor, and came up swinging. His fist, reinforced with Mandalorian gauntlet plates, connected with 10th Brother's helmet hard enough to crack it. You're not special, Bruce growled, pressing his advantage. You're just another bully with weapons you don't deserve. And I've been taking down bullies my whole life. 10th Brother tried to summon Force lightning, but Bruce had studied Kale's descriptions of Force user combat. He'd built his armor with insulation, with grounding, with countermeasures designed by someone who understood engineering even if he didn't understand mysticism. The lightning dissipated across his armor with minimal effect. Impossible, 10th Brother gasped, scrambling for his lightsaber. Nothing's impossible, Bruce replied. You just haven't fought anyone who didn't care about your Force powers before. He brought his axe down, not a killing blow, but a disabling strike that shattered the Inquisitor's arm and made him scream. You're not from this galaxy, 10th Brother said, pain making his voice shake. I can sense it. You're something else. Something that shouldn't exist here. I'm someone who doesn't quit, Bruce corrected. And someone who keeps his promises. I promised these workers I'd protect them. You threatened them. His expression was cold. That was a mistake. If you kill me, the Empire will send fleets, 10th Brother warned. They'll destroy this entire sector. Kill millions. Then I won't kill you, Bruce said. I'll just make sure you understand what happens when you threaten people under my protection. He disabled the Inquisitor completely, shattered limbs, damaged armor, injuries that would take months to heal. Then he placed a message on the Inquisitor's chest, burned in with a plasma cutter. The Undercity is protected. Leave, or send more Inquisitors. They'll get the same. When Imperial reinforcements finally cut through the rubble, they found 10th Brother barely conscious, his body broken, his pride shattered. And the insurgent leader was gone, vanished into the Undercity's depths like a shadow. The message spread across Nar Shaddaa within hours. The Bat Demon had fought an Imperial Inquisitor and won. Not killed, that would have brought overwhelming retaliation. But defeated, humiliated, sent back to his masters as a warning. Imperial Command made a calculation, the resources required to crush this insurgency completely would exceed the sector's value. Better to withdraw, establish containment, and prevent the insurgency from spreading beyond the Undercity. The stormtroopers pulled back. Checkpoints were dismantled. The occupation ended. In the depths of Sector 47, workers returned to their homes to find the Imperial forces gone. And painted on walls across the Undercity, in a dozen different sectors, was a symbol, crude wings spread in defiance, the mark of the Bat Demon who protected them. Bruce Wayne stood in his workshop, injuries from the fight being treated by Poro, while Kale examined the damaged armor. "You fought an Inquisitor and survived," Kale said with something like awe. "That's... I've heard of Mandalorians doing it, but never an outsider. Never someone who learned to fight in 3 weeks." "I've been fighting my whole life," Bruce corrected. "You just gave me better tools and techniques." He winced as Poro treated a plasma burn. "But yeah. Not doing that again if I can avoid it." "The Empire will return eventually," Yara warned. "This was just one battle. Then we'll fight the next one," Bruce said. "And the one after that. For as long as it takes." He looked around at the people who'd become his allies in this strange galaxy, Jace, Rizzo, Yara, Poro, Kale and his Mandalorians, and dozens of others who'd learned they didn't have to accept oppression. "We started this to protect workers," Bruce continued. "That hasn't changed. The Empire pulled back, but the Hutts are still out there. Corporate enforcers still exploit people. There's more work to do." "You're talking about expanding," Jace said. "I'm talking about not stopping," Bruce replied. "The Undercity of Nar Shaddaa is just the beginning. This galaxy is full of forgotten people in forgotten places, suffering while those above them prosper. Someone needs to stand up for them." He hefted his repaired axe. "Might as well be us." Word of the Nar Shaddaa Undercity rebellion spread across the Outer Rim. Whispered stories of the Bat Demon who'd organized workers, fought the Hutts, and defeated an Imperial Inquisitor. Some said he was a Mandalorian who'd lost his armor. Others claimed he was a Force user who rejected the Jedi and Sith. A few insisted he was something from beyond the known galaxy, a warrior from legends come to life. All of them were partially right. And in the depths of space, aboard ships and in cantinas, on industrial worlds and forgotten stations, workers and criminals and warriors heard the story and wondered, if it could happen on Nar Shaddaa, could it happen where they were? The Undercity had learned to fight back. And the galaxy was watching. News of Nar Shaddaa's Undercity rebellion reached Saw Gerrera 3 weeks after 10th Brother's humiliating defeat. The extremist rebel leader sat in his hidden base on Jeddah, studying holographic reports with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades fighting impossible wars against the Empire. An insurgent network in the Outer Rim, his Lieutenant Idrio Two Tubes reported, his breathing mask hissing with each word. Organized workers, defeated corporate and Hutt enforcers, drove off an Imperial occupation force. Led by someone they call the Bat Demon, no record of him before 2 months ago. No identification, no confirmed species, operates entirely in shadow. Tactics? Saw asked, his weathered face betraying nothing. Asymmetric warfare, hit-and-run attacks, civilian evacuation before Imperial assault, Idrio continued. Non-lethal engagement except when absolutely necessary. Heavy emphasis on worker protection and community defense rather than offensive operations against Imperial targets. Sounds like someone with principles, Saul muttered. Principles get you killed in this war. The reports also indicate Mandalorian involvement, Idrio added. Bounty Hunter clan apparently refused Hutt contracts and provided training instead. And the insurgent leader personally defeated an Inquisitor in single combat. That made Saul look up. Defeated. Not killed. Disabled and humiliated, Idrio confirmed. Left alive as a message. The Empire pulled back rather than commit resources to full suppression. Saul was silent for a long moment, his tactical mind processing implications. The Rebel Alliance, Mon Mothma's idealistic coalition, spent too much time on politics and not enough on actual fighting. They talked about restoring democracy while the Empire crushed worlds beneath its boot. But this was someone who understood that revolutions required action, not debate. I want to meet this Bat Demon, Saw decided. If he's building something genuine in the Outer Rim, something that actually threatens Imperial control rather than just making symbolic gestures, the rebellion needs to know about it. He paused. And if he's willing to fight the way wars actually need to be fought, without Mon Mothma's hand-wringing about acceptable casualties and political optics. You're thinking alliance, Idrio observed. I'm thinking opportunity, Saw corrected. Someone who can organize workers, fight the Empire, and isn't afraid to make hard choices, that's rare. Worth investigating. He stood, his cybernetic enhancements whirring. Prepare a ship. We're going to Nar Shaddaa. Bruce was in his workshop when the alert came, unfamiliar ship approaching Sector 47, broadcasting Rebel Alliance authentication codes but not matching any vessels in their limited database. He grabbed his axe and moved to the defensive position, finding Kale and Jace already there. Single light freighter, Kale reported, his helmet sensors tracking the incoming vessel. Modified YT model, heavy weapons, reinforced armor. That's not a cargo ship, that's a warship pretending to be civilian. Rebel Alliance codes, Jace added. But Yara says she doesn't recognize the specific authentication. Could be legitimate or could be someone who stole the codes. Let them land, Bruce decided. But keep weapons ready. If this goes bad, I want everyone in defensive positions. The ship, painted in faded colors that suggested years of hard use, settled onto a landing pad Bruce's network controlled. The boarding ramp descended with a hiss of pressurized air, and a figure emerged who immediately commanded attention. He was human, probably in his 50s, with cybernetic enhancements visible on his torso and legs. His face was weathered by decades of conflict, his eyes sharp with intelligence and something harder, the kind of determination that came from fighting battles no one else would. He walked with a pronounced limp but moved with the confidence of someone who'd survived things that killed lesser warriors. I'm looking for the one they call Bat Demon, the man said, his voice carrying authority that transcended official rank. I'm Saw Gerrera. Some call me a rebel extremist. Others call me a terrorist. I prefer someone who actually fights the Empire instead of talking about it. Bruce stepped forward, axe visible but not raised. I know the name. You're the one the Rebel Alliance doesn't talk about in public, the one who does the operations they want done but can't officially sanction. Saw's smile was grim. You're better informed than I expected for someone who's only been in this galaxy a few months. He studied Bruce with tactical assessment. You're the insurgent who organized Nar Shaddaa's Undercity. Built a resistance network from workers and criminals. Fought Hutt enforcers and Imperial stormtroopers. Defeated an Inquisitor. His expression shifted to something like respect. That's impressive. Most insurgencies I've seen last about 3 weeks before the Empire crushes them. You've lasted 2 months and gotten stronger. We survive by staying smart, Bruce replied. Not picking fights we can't win. Protecting civilians first. Building networks instead of armies. Smart tactics, Saw acknowledged. But ultimately insufficient. You're playing defense, protecting your sector, your people. The Empire will eventually commit enough resources to overwhelm you. They always do. He took a step closer. Unless you're willing to take the fight to them. Strike their supply lines. Sabotage their operations. Make them bleed for every world they occupy. That brings overwhelming retaliation, Bruce said. More civilian casualties. More worlds burned. The war is already happening, Saw countered. Worlds are already burning. The only question is whether you're going to fight back or just minimize damage while the Empire slowly crushes everything. His voice hardened. I spent decades watching people try to fight the smart way, the minimal casualties way. You know what that gets you? Defeat. Slow, inevitable defeat while you comfort yourself that at least you maintained moral high ground. And your way? Bruce challenged. Maximum aggression, any tactics necessary, civilian casualties acceptable as long as they hurt the Empire. How's that working out? I'm still fighting, Saw said bluntly. I'm still alive. I'm still making the Empire pay for every atrocity they commit. He gestured to the undercity around them. You've built something here, I respect that. But it's fragile. One star destroyer bombardment and everything you've created is ash. You need to think bigger. Become a real threat instead of a local irritation. Bruce studied Saw Gerrera with the analytical intensity he'd once used to assess Gotham's criminal organizations. The man was dangerous, committed, experienced, willing to cross lines that Bruce had spent years avoiding. But he was also genuine in his commitment to fighting the Empire, not playing political games or building personal power. Why are you here? Bruce asked directly. You didn't come to the Outer Rim just to critique my tactics. I came because you're doing something different, Saw replied. Most rebel cells I see are either Mon Mothma's political idealists who spend more time debating strategy than executing it, or criminal opportunists using the rebellion as cover for personal profit. You're neither. You're actually protecting people, actually building something that threatens Imperial control. He paused. I want to know if you're willing to expand that. Take what you've learned here and apply it across the Outer Rim. Build a real resistance movement instead of just one fortified sector. And what do you get out of this? Bruce asked. Saw's smile was sharp. An ally who understands that wars aren't won by playing defense. Someone who's proven they can organize the galaxy's underclass, the people Mon Mothma's alliance ignores because they're too poor, too criminal, too difficult to fit into her political coalition. He gestured to the workers moving through the sector. There's billions like them across the galaxy. Forgotten people in forgotten places. If someone organized them, gave them tools and training and purpose. You'd have an army, Bruce finished, understanding dawning. Not a conventional military force, but a network spanning the entire Outer Rim. Workers who could sabotage Imperial installations from the inside. Criminals who could disrupt supply lines. Forgotten populations who could provide intelligence and safe houses. Exactly, Saw confirmed. The Empire controls the galaxy through centralized power and infrastructure. They depend on workers to maintain their facilities, criminals to transport their contraband, underclasses to provide cheap labor. If those groups stopped cooperating, if they actively resisted. He trailed off meaningfully. Bruce was silent, his tactical mind working through implications. Saw Gerrera was offering exactly what Bruce had started to envision during his weeks on Nar Shaddaa: expansion beyond one sector, organization of the galaxy's forgotten populations, resistance that came from the bottom up rather than imposed from above. But it came with costs. Saw's methods were brutal, his tactics uncompromising. Aligning with him meant accepting civilian casualties, accepting that some battles required hard choices that kept Bruce awake at night. I need to think about this, Bruce said finally. Talk to my people. What you're proposing, it's not just my decision. These are their lives at risk. Take your time, Saw said. But not too much time. The Empire doesn't wait while you deliberate. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. I've heard interesting reports about you. That you're not from this galaxy. That you appeared out of nowhere with combat techniques no one recognizes. That you fight with weapons millennia out of date but somehow make them work. His sharp eyes studied Bruce. I don't care where you're from or what you are. I care whether you're willing to fight. Everything else is irrelevant. After Saw's ship departed, Bruce's core leadership gathered in the workshop. The debate was immediate and intense. He's right that we can't just defend one sector forever, Yara argued. Eventually the Empire will come back with enough force to crush us. We need to expand, build networks elsewhere, create redundancy. But Saw Gerrera's methods are brutal, Jace countered. He's blown up Imperial installations with civilians inside. Executed suspected collaborators without trial. Prioritized hurting the Empire over protecting innocent people. That's not what we're about. Maybe it needs to be, Rizzo said quietly. I've been thinking about what 10th Brother said before Bruce beat him, that the Empire would send fleets if we killed him. We showed restraint, tried to minimize casualties, and it worked this time. But what about next time? What if restraint gets people killed? Restraint is what separates us from the Empire, Bruce said firmly. We don't terrorize civilians. We don't execute prisoners. We don't become the thing we're fighting against. Then we die with our principles intact, Rizzo replied. Is that better? The question hung in the air. Bruce thought about Gotham, about the line he'd maintained between justice and vengeance, protection and brutality. He'd never killed, not directly, not intentionally. But he'd also operated in one city against criminals, not across a galaxy against an empire. I need to understand something, Bruce said, looking at each of them. When I started this, I promised to protect workers from exploitation. That was the mission, stop bullies from hurting people who couldn't fight back. Everything else was tactics. He paused. Is that still the mission? Or has it become something else? It's become survival, Yara said. We're not just protecting workers anymore, we're protecting ourselves from an empire that wants us dead. Then maybe we need to be clearer about what we're building, Bruce replied. Are we a defensive network protecting specific populations? Or are we becoming a military resistance movement trying to fight the empire across the galaxy? Can't we be both? Jace asked. Not without becoming what Saw Gerrera is, Bruce said. The more we expand, the more we attack Imperial targets, the more we prioritize hurting the Empire over protecting people. Eventually, we'll have to make choices that sacrifice civilians for strategic gain. That's what military resistance movements do. It's inevitable. So what's the alternative? Rizzo challenged. Stay small, stay local, hope the Empire forgets about us. Bruce was silent for a long moment. Then, we expand, but carefully. We build networks on other worlds, protection for workers, organization of underclasses, defensive capabilities. But we don't become Saw Gerrera's army. We don't attack Imperial installations just to hurt them. We defend, we protect, we resist exploitation. He looked at Kale. Mandalorian perspective, can you fight a defensive war across multiple fronts? It's difficult, Kale admitted. Defending multiple positions against a superior force typically fails because you're spread too thin. But... He paused, thinking. If each defended position is self-sufficient, if they're networked but independent, if they prioritize survival over victory, it's possible. Not easy, but possible. Then that's what we build, Bruce decided. We help other worlds organize their own undercity rebellions. Teach them our tactics, share our methods, provide support. But each cell operates independently, makes its own decisions, fights its own battles. We're not building an army, we're building a movement. And Saw Gerrera? Yara asked. We work with him when our objectives align, Bruce said. Share intelligence, coordinate operations where it makes sense. But we don't subordinate ourselves to his command or adopt his methods. He looked at each of them. We fight the Empire our way. If that means we're less effective in conventional military terms, fine. I'd rather lose slowly while maintaining our principles than win by becoming monsters. The decision made, Bruce's network began careful expansion. Not the rapid military buildup Saw Gerrera wanted, but methodical organization of worker populations on other Outer Rim worlds. The first target was Ord Mantell, a junkyard world where millions of workers processed the galaxy's industrial waste. Bruce sent Jace and a small team to make contact with local organizers, share tactics, provide training. Within 6 weeks, Ord Mantell had its own defensive network, its own version of the Undercity Rebellion. The second was Ryloth, a world where Twi'lek workers suffered under imperial and criminal exploitation. Yara led that effort, her species and her experience making her the perfect ambassador. The Ryloth cells took longer to establish, the population was more scattered, the oppression more brutal, but eventually, they too began resisting. Third was Lothal, an agricultural world being strip-mined by the Empire. Rizzo coordinated with local resistance movements already operating there, providing tactical advice and equipment modifications that made their operations more effective. Each world's rebellion was independent but connected. They shared intelligence through encrypted networks Poro had built. They coordinated timing on operations to spread Imperial response too thin. They learned from each other's successes and failures. It wasn't an army. It was something more dangerous, a philosophy spreading across the outer rim. The idea that workers didn't have to accept exploitation, that criminals could choose protection over predation, that the forgotten could become protectors of each other. The Empire noticed. Imperial intelligence flagged the pattern, insurgent cells operating with similar tactics across multiple worlds, all focused on worker protection and defensive resistance rather than offensive operations. They couldn't prove connection, couldn't identify central leadership, but the similarity suggested coordination. A new priority target was designated, the Bat Network, as analysts had started calling it. Not a military threat like the Rebel Alliance, but something potentially more insidious, a movement that could undermine Imperial control from the bottom up. Darth Vader received the intelligence briefing aboard the Executor, his mechanical breathing the only sound as he studied reports from a dozen worlds. Nar Shaddaa, Ord Mantell, Ryloth, Lothal, Toydaria, Ariadu. Each showing the same pattern, worker organization, defensive networks, resistance to exploitation. This is not Rebel Alliance activity, Vader observed. Their tactics are different. More focused on protection than warfare. Agreed, Lord Vader, the intelligence officer reported. But the economic disruption is significant. Multiple worlds showing decreased imperial production, increased worker demands for rights, growing resistance to corporate and criminal exploitation. If this continues, it will spread, Vader finished. A philosophy is more dangerous than an army. Armies can be defeated through superior force. Philosophies require different approaches. He turned from the holographic display. I will investigate personally. Beginning with Nar Shaddaa, where this movement originated. My lord, Nar Shaddaa's undercity is heavily fortified now, the officer warned. 10th Brother's assault failed. Perhaps a larger force would accomplish nothing except proving this movement correct, that the Empire rules through brute force and fear, Vader interrupted. No. This requires a more subtle approach. His mask turned toward the officer. I will go alone. Speak with their leader. Understand what motivates this resistance. Alone, Lord Vader. That seems. I have faced Jedi Masters who could collapse mountains, Vader said coldly. I am not concerned about one insurgent with an axe. But as he prepared for departure, Vader couldn't shake a feeling of, not quite concern, but curiosity. The reports described someone who fought with techniques the Empire had never encountered, who organized populations that should have been too beaten down to resist, who defeated trained warriors through methods that made no tactical sense. Someone from outside the Empire's experience entirely. Vader had learned long ago to trust his instincts in the Force. And his instincts told him this Bat Demon was something unprecedented. Bruce was working in his expanded workshop, now 3 times the size it had been 2 months ago, filled with salvaged equipment and projects in various stages of completion, when alarms sounded. Not the 3-pulse warning of hostile force, but something else. A single sustained tone that meant, critical threat, highest danger level. He grabbed his axe and moved to the command center, where Poro was staring at sensor displays with undisguised fear. What is it? Bruce demanded. Single individual, approaching from the Undercity's upper levels, Poro said, his voice shaking. But the signature. Bruce, that's Darth Vader. He's coming here. Alone. The name sent ripples through everyone present. They'd all heard stories: the Emperor's enforcer, the Dark Lord of the Sith, the warrior who'd killed hundreds of Jedi and crushed countless rebellions. The one being in the galaxy that even hardened criminals feared. And he was walking into their sector, alone, apparently unconcerned about walking into the heart of their defensive network. Why alone? Jace asked. He could bring armies. Why walk in by himself? Because he's Vader, Yara breathed. He doesn't need armies. He's making a point, that he's not afraid of us, that our defenses mean nothing to him. Or he's here to talk, Bruce said, studying the sensor data. If he wanted to attack, he'd have brought forces. Coming alone suggests different intent. What do we do? Rizzo asked. Bruce thought for exactly 3 seconds. Everyone except me evacuates to secondary positions. Now. I'll meet with Vader. That's suicide, Kale objected. He's a Sith Lord. You can't fight him the way you fought 10th Brother. I'm not planning to fight him, Bruce replied. Not unless he forces it. But if Vader's here to talk, we need to hear what he has to say. He looked at Kale. You said Mandalorians believe in understanding your enemy. Well, here's our chance. I also said we believe in survival, Kale countered. Meeting Vader alone violates that principle. Then I'm glad it's not your decision, Bruce said, already moving toward the sector's main entrance. Get everyone out. If this goes wrong, you lead the network. Protect the people. Continue the mission. He didn't wait for response, just walked toward the one encounter he'd been dreading since learning about the Empire's most dangerous enforcer. Darth Vader stood in the center of Sector 47's main plaza, a dark monument of black armor and flowing cape. His breathing apparatus cycled with mechanical rhythm that echoed off metal walls. Workers fled at his approach, but he made no move to pursue them. Bruce emerged from shadows, axe in hand, and stopped 10 meters away. For a long moment, neither spoke. Bruce studied the Sith Lord with tactical intensity, 7 feet tall, armored in material that looked impervious to conventional weapons, lightsaber visible at his belt but not drawn. Vader's mask revealed nothing, but Bruce could feel weight of attention, assessment happening behind that featureless black facade. You are the one they call Bat Demon, Vader said finally, his mechanical voice carrying across the empty plaza. The insurgent who organized Nar Shaddaa's workers. Who defeated my Inquisitor. Who has been spreading resistance across the Outer Rim. And you're Darth Vader, Bruce replied. The Empire's enforcer. The one who murdered the Jedi and helps maintain tyranny across the galaxy. Yes, Vader acknowledged without defensiveness. I am those things. Just as you are an insurgent, a revolutionary, someone who believes the Empire can be resisted. He took a step forward. But you are also something else. Something that does not belong in this galaxy. Bruce's grip on his axe tightened imperceptibly. What makes you think that? I sense the Force in all living things, Vader replied. It connects the galaxy, binds every being to the cosmic order. But you. His mask tilted slightly. You register as absence. Not Force no like the Yuuzhan Vong, but something else entirely. As if you exist outside the natural order of this galaxy. Bruce was silent. No point denying what Vader had already determined. You are from elsewhere, Vader continued. Another galaxy. Perhaps another universe entirely. That is how you possess combat techniques no one recognizes. Why you think differently than any insurgent I have encountered. Why your very presence feels wrong to those attuned to the Force. Does it matter? Bruce asked. Very much, Vader said. Because it means you do not understand this galaxy's power structures. You think you can organize workers, build networks, resist the Empire through conventional insurgency. He took another step closer. You cannot. The Empire is not merely a government or military force. It is manifestation of the dark side of the Force, power and order made inevitable. Your resistance, however determined, is futile. I've heard that speech before, Bruce replied. From crime lords, corrupt politicians, corporate executives. Every tyrant thinks they're inevitable. They're always wrong. Because you defeated them, Vader said. In your world, wherever that was, your method succeeded. You have carried that confidence here, believing the same tactics will work. His tone shifted slightly. They will not. I have crushed hundreds of resistance movements. They all believed they could succeed. They were all destroyed. Then why are you here? Bruce challenged. If I'm so obviously doomed to fail, why come personally instead of sending another assault force? Vader was silent for a moment. Because you intrigue me, he said finally. Most insurgents are motivated by ideology, revenge, or personal ambition. You are motivated by something else, protection of those weaker than yourself. That is, unusual. It's called having principles, Bruce said. Principles are weakness, Vader replied. They create constraints that your enemies do not share. They ensure your eventual defeat. He paused. But they also demonstrate strength of will. Discipline. Qualities I respect, despite their futility. Bruce studied the Dark Lord, trying to understand the subtext beneath mechanical voice. You didn't come here to fight. You came to, what? Recruit me? Convince me to join the Empire? No, Vader said. You would never serve the Empire. Your nature prevents it. He turned away slightly, looking at the undercity around them. I came to offer warning. What you are building here, this network of resistance across the Outer Rim, is starting to concern Imperial Command. Soon, they will decide it requires elimination. When that happens, forces will be deployed that make 10th Brother's assault look like preliminary reconnaissance. Let them come, Bruce said with cold confidence. We've survived everything thrown at us so far. Because you have not faced the Empire's true power, Vader countered. Star destroyers capable of orbital bombardment. Legions of stormtroopers. Inquisitors working in coordination. And me, if the Emperor decides your continued existence threatens his order. He turned back to face Bruce directly. You cannot win that fight. No one can. Then why warn me? Bruce asked. Vader was silent for a long moment. Because I once believed as you do. That determination and principle could overcome overwhelming power. That protecting the innocent mattered more than personal survival. His mechanical breathing cycled. I was wrong. The galaxy taught me that power is absolute, that principles are luxuries that get people killed. Bruce heard something beneath the mechanical voice, not quite regret, but something close. Memory of the person Vader had been before the armor. You were a Jedi, Bruce said, pieces clicking together. Before you became this. You fought for the same things I'm fighting for. And I failed, Vader replied harshly. Everyone I tried to protect died. Everyone I loved was destroyed. Because I believed that being right mattered more than being strong. He took a step closer, looming over Bruce. I am giving you the opportunity one never received, the chance to walk away before the galaxy crushes you beneath its inevitability. I don't quit, Bruce said simply. Then you will die, Vader replied. Along with everyone you are trying to protect. The Empire will burn the worlds you've organized. Execute the workers you've trained. Destroy everything you have built. And your principles, your determination, your righteous anger, they will mean nothing when you watch it all collapse. Bruce looked up at the Dark Lord, this monument of tragedy and power who'd come to offer a warning born from his own failures. Maybe I will die. Maybe everyone I'm trying to protect will be destroyed. But I'll die fighting. And maybe, just maybe, I'll inspire enough people along the way that the fight continues after I'm gone. Inspiration without power is meaningless, Vader said. Power without purpose is empty, Bruce countered. You became the Empire's enforcer because you thought power was absolute. But you're here, alone, warning an insurgent instead of crushing him. That tells me that somewhere beneath that armor, you still remember what it felt like to fight for something besides power. Vader's breathing apparatus cycled faster, the only sign of emotional reaction. You know nothing of what I remember. I know what happens when people give up on principles because the fight gets too hard, Bruce said. I've seen it in my world. People who started trying to help and became monsters because they convinced themselves the ends justified the means. You're what happens when a hero breaks. I am what happens when heroes face reality, Vader corrected. But his voice carried less certainty than before. For a moment, they stood in silence. Two warriors from different galaxies, different philosophies, both shaped by tragedy and choices that couldn't be unmade. Leave Nar Shaddaa, Vader said finally. Abandon your resistance. Disappear into the outer rim and survive. That is the only mercy I can offer. And if I refuse? Then the next time we meet, I will not come alone. And I will not offer warnings. Vader turned to leave, his cape billowing with the movement. You have impressed me, insurgent. You have courage and determination that transcend your origin. But courage without wisdom is suicide. Consider carefully whether your principles are worth the lives they will cost. He was gone, melting into shadows with surprising speed for someone so massive. Bruce stood alone in the empty plaza, processing the encounter with tactical thoroughness. Vader had come to warn him. Not threaten, warn. The Dark Lord, the Empire's most feared enforcer, had taken time to personally deliver a message, walk away or be destroyed. Which meant Bruce's network was succeeding enough to worry them. Was becoming enough of a threat that the Empire felt the need for diplomatic approach before military escalation. That was useful intelligence. But it was also confirmation that Vader had been right about one thing: eventually, the Empire would commit overwhelming force to crush this resistance. And when that happened, Bruce's defensive networks and improvised equipment would be insufficient. He needed to be smarter. Needed to build something that could survive even when the Empire deployed its full power. Needed to ensure that if, when, he fell, the movement would continue without him. Bruce returned to his workshop, where his leadership had regathered despite his evacuation order. They looked at him with mixture of relief and questions. Vader came alone, Bruce confirmed. Talked instead of fought. Warned us that the Empire will escalate eventually. What did you tell him? Yara asked. That we're not quitting, Bruce replied. He moved to his workbench, pulling up schematics he'd been developing. But he was right about one thing: we need to be prepared for escalation. That means more defensive hardpoints, better evacuation protocols, redundancy in leadership structure. He looked at each of them. And it means training more of you to do what I do. So if I'm killed, captured, or removed, the network continues. You think Vader will come back? Kale asked. Eventually, Bruce confirmed. Or the Empire will send something worse. But we have time, that's what this warning means. They're giving us chance to walk away before they commit to full assault. He smiled grimly. We're not walking away. So we use that time to prepare. Word of Vader's personal visit to Nar Shaddaa spread through both Imperial and insurgent networks. The interpretations varied wildly. Some said Vader had been intimidated, others that he'd shown mercy, others that he was planning something far worse than simple assault. But the message everyone received was clear: the Bat Demon's network had grown significant enough to draw the personal attention of the Empire's most dangerous warrior. And in cantinas and worker districts across the Outer Rim, people whispered a new story, that someone had faced Darth Vader and survived. That resistance was possible even against the Empire's ultimate enforcer. The legend was growing. And legends, as Bruce was learning, could be more powerful than any weapon. In his private meditation chamber aboard the Executor, Darth Vader stood motionless, his breathing apparatus the only sound. He replayed the encounter in his mind, analyzing the insurgents' responses, his determination, his absolute refusal to accept inevitable defeat. It reminded Vader of someone he'd been, long ago. Before the armor. Before the dark side consumed everything he tried to protect. "You should have killed him," a voice said, the Emperor's presence in the Force, distant but commanding. "He represents potential threat to our order." "He represents minimal military threat," Vader replied through their Force connection. "His network lacks offensive capabilities. They defend workers, nothing more. Defense can become offense," Palpatine warned. "And his resistance spreads. Other worlds follow his example. That makes him dangerous regardless of his intentions." "I will monitor the situation," Vader said. "If he escalates, I will eliminate him personally." "See that you do," the Emperor said. "Do not let sentiment cloud your judgment, Lord Vader. I sense your curiosity about this anomaly. Curiosity is weakness." The connection faded. Vader remained standing in the darkness, thinking about the insurgent who'd refused to quit even when facing certain defeat. He'd been like that once. Before reality had taught him that determination without power was meaningless. But the insurgent had said something that lingered: power without purpose is empty. Vader crushed the thought. Purpose was weakness. Power was absolute. He'd learned that through decades of service to the Empire. But deep in the remnants of what had once been Anakin Skywalker, a buried part of him wondered, if power was absolute, why did he spend so much effort defending the Emperor's order? What, exactly, was he so afraid of that he needed absolute power to prevent? The questions went unanswered as Vader returned to his duties. But they lingered, unwelcome thoughts in the darkness of his mind. Admiral Thrawn's strategic trap closed with the precision of a master tactician. It began on Ryloth, where Imperial forces established a new, labor incentive program, a euphemism for forced relocation of workers from mountain villages to valley factory complexes. The Twi'lek population resisted, but the Empire made their position clear: cooperate voluntarily or watch your villages be destroyed. Cham's cell activated immediately, requesting support from the broader network. Bruce reviewed the intelligence with growing unease. The Imperial deployment was larger than necessary for simple worker relocation: 3 companies of stormtroopers, 2 AT-AT walkers, air support. That was suppression-level force, not crowd control. "It's a trap," Kale said, studying the tactical display beside Bruce. "They're using the workers as bait. They want you to intervene, to commit forces where they can track and eliminate them." "I know," Bruce replied quietly. "But if we don't intervene, they'll destroy those villages. Kill thousands of civilians to make an example. And if you do intervene, they'll use it to identify and eliminate your key personnel," Kale countered. "Thrawn, that's the new admiral coordinating Outer Rim operations, is known for this. He studies opponents, identifies their psychological patterns, creates scenarios where any choice serves his strategic objectives." "So what do you suggest?" Bruce asked. "We abandon those workers. Let the Empire win because intervening is exactly what they want." "I suggest we consider that saving everyone might not be possible," Kale said carefully. "Mandalorian warfare teaches tactical withdrawal when battles can't be won. Preserve your forces for fights you can actually win." Bruce's jaw tightened. "That's not an option. We built this network on the promise that we protect people. If we abandon that principle the first time it becomes tactically inconvenient, what are we even fighting for?" "Survival," Kale replied bluntly. "You can't protect anyone if you're dead or captured." The argument continued, but Bruce had already made his decision. He'd faced impossible choices in Gotham, situations where every option led to casualties, where the best he could do was minimize suffering rather than prevent it. But he'd never accepted that protecting people was impossible, only that it was difficult. "We're intervening," Bruce decided. "But not directly. We evacuate the villages before the Empire can destroy them, move the population through routes they won't anticipate. By the time Imperial forces arrive, the villages will be empty. And when the Empire realizes you've evacuated everyone? Yara asked. Then they'll know that their trap failed, Bruce replied. That we're smart enough to see what they're doing and adaptive enough to counter it. He pulled up topographic maps of Rylotha's mountain regions. The Twi'lek have underground tunnel networks, ancient smuggling routes that predate Imperial occupation. We use those to move populations out of target zones and into regions where the Empire can't easily pursue. That's thousands of people, Cham's hologram said. Moving them without detection will take days. Then we start now, Bruce said. Cham, your cell coordinates on the ground. Yara, you handle logistics, food, water, supplies for displaced populations. Rizzo, establish defensive positions along evacuation routes in case the Empire realizes what we're doing mid-operation. Kale, your Mandalorians provide air cover. If Imperial forces deploy TIE fighters to patrol evacuation zones, you intercept them. The operation was Bruce Wayne at his most effective, engineering logistics, tactical coordination, and moral determination combined into a plan that seemed impossible but somehow worked. Over 4 days, 11,000 Twi'lek civilians disappeared from mountain villages through tunnels the Empire didn't know existed, emerging in regions where Imperial surveillance was minimal. When the Imperial forces arrived to execute their labor incentive program, they found empty villages. No workers to relocate. No civilians to use as leverage. No targets for the trap Thrawn had carefully constructed. The message was clear. The Bat network was too smart to fall for obvious bait. But Thrawn wasn't frustrated by the failure. He was learning. Predictable, the Chiss Admiral said, studying reports of the evacuation with analytical interest. The insurgent leader prioritizes civilian protection over tactical advantage. When faced with choosing between preserving his forces or saving endangered populations, he chooses the latter even when it exposes his capabilities. He turned to his staff. This provides actionable intelligence. We now know he has access to Rylotha's tunnel networks, has aerial support capabilities sufficient to challenge our TIE patrols, and can coordinate large-scale movements across multiple cells. More importantly, we know his decision-making is driven by moral imperative rather than strategic calculation. How does that help us, sir? An officer asked. Because moral imperatives are predictable, Thrawn explained. He will always choose to protect civilians. He will always attempt to minimize casualties. He will always try to save everyone, even when doing so is strategically unsound. The Admiral pulled up star charts showing the Bat Network's 17 operational worlds. We create a scenario where he must choose, save one endangered population by abandoning another, or split his forces attempting to save both and ensure he can save neither. Whatever he chooses, we learn more about his priorities and limitations. You're talking about simultaneous crises, the officer realized. Multiple worlds at once, forcing him to triage. Precisely, Thrawn confirmed. The Bat network has grown large, but it remains dependent on distributed coordination from a central strategic authority, likely the insurgent leader himself. If we create more simultaneous crises than he can address, we force him to reveal his true capabilities and constraints. The failures will tell us as much as the successes. How many simultaneous operations? Another officer asked. 5, Thrawn decided after moments' consideration. Sufficient to overwhelm his coordination capabilities without requiring excessive Imperial resources. Target worlds with confirmed Bat network presence. Create distinct crisis scenarios, some requiring defensive action, others needing offensive intervention, still others demanding immediate humanitarian response. Make each crisis legitimate threat, not obvious bait. Force him to make genuine choices about resource allocation. This will require significant coordination across multiple sectors, the first officer warned. Then begin coordination immediately, Thrawn commanded. I want operations ready for simultaneous execution within 2 weeks. This insurgent network has demonstrated adaptability and resilience. Time to discover their breaking point. Bruce felt it before any intelligence confirmed it, that instinct he'd honed in Gotham that warned him when enemies were adapting, when the tactical situation was shifting in ways he couldn't yet see. He spent 3 days compulsively reviewing intelligence reports, searching for patterns that would explain the warning his subconscious was screaming. Kale found him in the command center at 0300 hours, surrounded by holographic displays showing data from all 17 cells. "You haven't slept." "Can't," Bruce replied, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion but still scanning reports. "Something's wrong. The Empire's been too quiet since Ryloth. No retaliation, no increased patrols, no apparent response to us evacuating 11,000 civilians from under their noses. Maybe they've decided we're not worth the resources," Kale suggested without conviction. "You don't believe that any more than I do," Bruce said. "The Empire doesn't ignore successful resistance. They adapt and escalate." He pulled up Imperial ship movements across the Outer Rim. "Look at this, Star Destroyer redeployments to 5 of our operational worlds. Not assault positions, just increased presence. Stormtrooper garrison reinforcements on 3 others. And here," he highlighted communications traffic, encrypted Imperial transmissions suggesting coordinated operation planning. "You think they're preparing simultaneous assaults," Kale observed. "I think they're preparing something more sophisticated than assault," Bruce corrected. "Thrawn isn't a blunt instrument. Everything I've learned about him suggests he studies opponents, identifies patterns, creates scenarios that exploit psychological weaknesses." He turned to face Kale directly. "He's been observing us for weeks. Learning how we operate. Now he's going to test us. Then we prepare for testing," Kale said pragmatically. "Increase defensive readiness across all cells. Establish rapid response protocols. Ensure redundant communication systems in case primary networks are compromised." "Already done," Bruce said. "But preparation only goes so far. If Thrawn's planned something that requires choosing between multiple crisis scenarios, we need to accept that we might not be able to address them all. That people might die because we're spread too thin. That's warfare," Kale said. "No commander saves everyone. The best you can do is minimize casualties and ensure strategic objectives are achieved." "My strategic objective is protecting people," Bruce replied. "If I can't do that, what's the point?" "The point is that resistance continues," Kale answered. "That the Empire learns they can't control populations through fear and exploitation. That enough people stand up that eventually, the system collapses under its own weight." He placed a hand on Bruce's shoulder, unusual gesture for a Mandalorian. "You've built something remarkable here. But you can't carry all of it alone. Trust your people. Trust the training you've provided. Trust that if you fall, the network continues." Bruce wanted to argue, but exhaustion was finally catching up. "Wake me if anything develops. Otherwise, I'm taking 6 hours." "I'll wake you in 8, Kale said. "You need actual rest, not the half-conscious tactical processing you call sleep." For once, Bruce didn't argue. He stumbled to his quarters and collapsed, his body finally overriding his mind's protests. The nightmares came immediately. Gotham's flooded levels, but this time the drowning people had faces he recognized: Yara, Jace, Rizzo, Cham, workers he'd trained, families he'd protected. They called to him for help, but he couldn't reach them all. Every person he saved meant abandoning another. Every choice was wrong. He woke gasping after only 4 hours, but felt marginally more human. The chronometer showed 0730, operational briefing in 30 minutes. Bruce forced himself through basic hygiene and maintenance, then headed to the command center where his core team was already assembled. Imperial activity increased across 5 worlds overnight, Yara reported without preamble. Lothal, Ryloth, Ord Mantell, Toydaria, and Gorse. Different crisis types, some appear to be military operations, others look like humanitarian disasters, at least one seems to be civil unrest that might or might not be Imperial instigated. Simultaneous? Bruce asked, his tactical mind immediately recognizing the pattern. Within 6-hour window, Yara confirmed. Too close to be coincidence. It's Thrawn's test, Bruce said, moving to the tactical displays. He's creating multiple crises simultaneously to see how we respond. Probably analyzing our resource allocation, coordination capabilities, decision-making priorities. He studied each crisis scenario. Details. Starting with most severe. Lothal's capital city is experiencing toxic chemical leak from Imperial factory, Rizzo reported via hologram. Could be accident or sabotage, but thousands of civilians are in contamination zone. Evacuation required within 12 hours or casualties will be catastrophic. Ryloth reports Imperial forces conducting sweep operations in regions where we evacuated civilians last month, Cham added. They're hunting for tunnel network access points. If they find them, they'll collapse the entire system, cutting off primary evacuation route for future operations. Ord Mantell has worker uprising in primary factory district, Jace said. Started as legitimate labor action demanding better conditions, but escalated into violence. Imperial forces are responding with lethal suppression. Casualties already in double digits, rising fast. Toydaria's Hutt cartel has begun mass arrests of suspected network sympathizers, another representative reported. They're executing prisoners publicly, 1 per hour until we surrender local cell leadership. And Gorse reports Star Destroyer in orbit is preparing orbital bombardment of suspected insurgent positions, the final representative added. We've got maybe 18 hours before they start. 5 distinct crises. 5 different response requirements. And Bruce's network didn't have resources to address all of them simultaneously. This was exactly what Thrawn had intended, force Bruce to reveal priorities through impossible choices. Whatever he saved would demonstrate what he valued most. Whatever he abandoned would show his limitations. Analysis, Bruce commanded, his mind already working through options. Most time sensitive. Lothal chemical leak, Yara said immediately. 12 hours maximum before contamination reaches lethal levels for civilian population. Most strategically critical. Ryloth tunnel networks, Kale answered. Lose those and you lose primary evacuation capability for entire planet. Future operations become exponentially more difficult. Highest immediate casualties. Ord Mantell, Jace said grimly. Workers are dying right now. Every minute we delay means more deaths. Most tactically significant. Gorse bombardment, another voice said. Imperial Star Destroyer represents threat we can't conventionally counter. If they start orbital strikes, we lose not just that cell but the precedent. Empire learns bombardment works against us. And Toydaria? Bruce asked. Psychological warfare, Rizzo concluded. Hutt cartel executing prisoners hourly is designed to break morale, force surrender through emotional pressure rather than tactical necessity. Bruce was silent for 30 seconds, an eternity in crisis response. His team waited, recognizing he was processing variables at inhuman speed, calculating scenarios and outcomes with the analytical precision he'd honed over decades of engineering and tactical planning. We address all 5, Bruce said finally. That's impossible, Yara objected. We don't have resources or personnel to. We address all 5 by being smarter than Thrawn expects, Bruce interrupted. He pulled up strategic overlays. He's assuming we'll prioritize, we'll make choices that reveal our values and limitations. We defeat that assumption by refusing to choose. Distributed operations, maximum efficiency, creative problem solving. He turned to his team. Lothal chemical leak, that's engineering problem, not military one. Poro, take technical team to Lothal. Your objective isn't evacuation, it's containment. Find the leak source and seal it. You've got the skills. Ryloth tunnel networks, that's about preventing Imperial discovery, not direct confrontation. Cham, collapse selected access points to make it look like natural cave-ins. Guide Imperial search to areas where they won't find actual tunnels. Make them waste resources searching wrong locations. Ord Mantell uprising, workers are already fighting. They don't need us to fight for them, they need tactical support. Jace, provide coordination, medical supplies, defensive position recommendations. Don't suppress the uprising, channel it into defensible situation where casualties are minimized. Toydaria executions, Hutt cartel wants surrender. Give them something that looks like surrender but isn't. Find expendable intelligence, stuff they already know or can't use, and trade it for prisoner releases. Buy time while we extract actual leadership through separate operation. Gorse bombardment, Star Destroyer thinks we're afraid of orbital strikes. Prove we're not. Evacuate suspected insurgent positions before bombardment begins, then after they waste ordnance on empty buildings, send message, missed us. Try again. Psychological warfare cuts both ways. His team stared at him. That's actually brilliant, Yara said slowly. Unconventional solutions that address each crisis without committing overwhelming force to any single one. It's also risky as hell, Rizzo added. If any one operation fails, then we adapt, Bruce cut him off. But we don't abandon anyone. We don't make Thrawn's choice for him. We prove that his entire scenario was based on false assumptions about our capabilities and constraints. Mandalorians call this tactical audacity, Kale said with approval in his filtered voice. Accepting risk to achieve objectives conventional wisdom says are impossible. I like it. Like it fast, Bruce said. We've got hours, not days. Everyone to your assignments. Coordinate through encrypted channels. Assume Imperial intelligence is monitoring everything. And remember, we're not trying to win military victories. We're trying to protect people while demonstrating that the Empire can't predict or control us. The next 18 hours were organized chaos. Bruce coordinated from Nar Shaddaa, his mind operating in parallel across 5 crisis scenarios, processing updates in real time, adjusting plans as situations evolved. Poro's team reached Lothal and identified the chemical leak, not accidental but definitely not Imperial sabotage. A corroded pipe in aging infrastructure, natural failure point that happened to coincide with Thrawn's operation schedule. But whether accident or engineered coincidence didn't matter. Poro's engineering expertise let him seal the leak with improvised materials in 6 hours, well before contamination reached lethal levels for civilian populations. Cham executed the tunnel deception perfectly. He collapsed 3 minor access points with charges positioned to look like natural cave-ins, then leaked false intelligence suggesting major network entrances were in completely different region. Imperial forces diverted to search wrong areas, wasting resources while actual tunnels remained secure. Jace's support for Ord Mantell uprising transformed chaotic violence into organized resistance. Workers received medical supplies, tactical advice on defensive positions, and communication equipment that let them coordinate across factory districts. The uprising didn't end, but casualties dropped dramatically as workers learned to protect themselves rather than throw lives away in futile assaults on fortified Imperial positions. Toydaria's negotiated surrender was masterclass in deception. Bruce provided intelligence that was accurate but useless, locations of safe houses already abandoned, names of network members already evacuated, supply caches already relocated. The Hutt cartel accepted the intelligence as legitimate surrender, released prisoners, and didn't realize until days later that they'd been sold information with zero tactical value. And Gorse's evacuation before bombardment was executed with hours to spare. When the Star Destroyer finally commenced orbital strikes, they hit empty buildings and evacuated positions. Bruce's follow-up message, broadcast on channels he knew Imperial intelligence monitored, was simple: missed us. Maybe invest in better targeting systems. 5 crises. 5 successful resolutions. Zero casualties among network members, minimal civilian deaths, and Thrawn's strategic test turned into demonstration of network adaptability. Admiral Thrawn studied the after-action reports with expression that his staff couldn't read. The Chiss Admiral's alien features didn't betray emotion in ways humans understood. But his tone when he finally spoke suggested something between frustration and respect. "Remarkable," Thrawn said quietly. "Not one crisis was resolved through conventional tactics. Each solution was creative, efficient, and specifically designed to deny us intelligence about their actual capabilities." He highlighted Bruce's responses on tactical displays. "The insurgent leader refuses to make the choices we provide. Instead, he redefines the scenario parameters to create options we didn't anticipate." "So the operation failed, sir?" an officer asked carefully. "No," Thrawn corrected. "The operation provided exactly what I needed, understanding of how this enemy thinks. He doesn't accept impossible choices. He finds third options that shouldn't exist. That tells me his background isn't military, despite his tactical effectiveness. Military training teaches accepting casualties in service of objectives. This insurgent treats casualties as failures to be prevented through creative problem-solving. How does that help us counter him?" "Because creative problem-solving has limits," Thrawn explained. "He succeeded today because we gave him multiple crises with engineering or tactical solutions. But eventually, we create a scenario where no amount of creativity prevents loss. Where the physics or logistics or timing makes certain outcomes inevitable." He pulled up new strategic overlays. "We escalate methodically. Each operation pushes him closer to his breaking point, not physical or tactical breaking, but psychological. The moment he realizes his methods can't prevent casualties no matter how smart he is." "You're trying to break his will," the officer realized. "I'm trying to make him understand reality," Thrawn corrected. "That his approach, while admirable, ultimately cannot succeed against the Empire's resources. That resistance, no matter how principled, eventually fails when facing overwhelming systemic power. When he accepts that truth, he will either surrender, unlikely given his demonstrated commitment, or compromise his principles to pursue more effective tactics. Either outcome serves imperial interests." "And if he doesn't break?" another officer asked. Thrawn was silent for a moment. "Then I will have encountered an opponent whose determination transcends rational calculation. Such individuals are historically rare but invariably dangerous. If this insurgent proves to be one of them." The Admiral's alien eyes showed something that might have been anticipation. "Then this becomes the most interesting campaign I have conducted in years." Bruce didn't celebrate the successful crisis management. He understood, perhaps better than his team, that Thrawn had gained intelligence even through failure. The Admiral now knew that Bruce wouldn't make expected choices, would always try to save everyone, would find creative solutions to impossible problems. That knowledge would inform Thrawn's next test. And the next. Eventually, the Admiral would create a scenario where creativity wasn't enough. In his workshop late that night, Bruce worked on equipment modifications with hands that shook slightly from exhaustion. 18 hours of sustained tactical coordination had pushed him past healthy limits again, but he couldn't stop. Couldn't rest. Because resting meant thinking about how close today had come to disaster, how many points of potential failure existed in every operation, how much depended on his ability to keep processing multiple crisis scenarios simultaneously. "You did well today," Yara said from the doorway. She'd taken to checking on him at random hours, apparently appointed herself his unwanted caretaker. "We got lucky," Bruce replied, not looking up from the armor plate he was modifying. "Thrawn gave us problems with solutions. Next time, he might not." "Then we'll adapt to next time," Yara said. "That's what we do, adapt, overcome, survive." "Until we can't," Bruce said quietly. "Until Thrawn creates a scenario where people die no matter what I do. Where my choices are which population to abandon, not how to save them all." "Then you make the hard choice," Yara said. "Choose based on whatever criteria seem most justified," strategic value, number of lives, likelihood of success. It won't be perfect, but it'll be the best decision possible under impossible circumstances. And the people who die because I chose wrong? Bruce asked. How do I justify that? You don't, Yara replied bluntly. You accept that in war, people die. Leaders who think they can prevent all casualties either go insane trying or become paralyzed when they realize they can't. You're already close to both. Bruce finally looked at her. Your point. My point is that you're human, Yara said. Not a superhuman, not a force user, not some mythological figure who can do the impossible through sheer determination. You're a person, an exceptional person with remarkable skills, but still fundamentally limited. And you need to accept those limits before they destroy you. Can't, Bruce said simply. Accepting limits means accepting that people suffer when I could have prevented it. I won't do that. Then you're going to burn out, Yara warned. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, but eventually. And when you do, the entire network suffers because we've become too dependent on your refusal to accept human limitations. She left before Bruce could respond. He sat in the empty workshop, surrounded by salvaged equipment and improvised weapons, and acknowledged the truth he'd been avoiding. Yara was right. He was approaching breaking point, not physical or tactical, but psychological. The weight of protecting 17 worlds, coordinating dozens of operations, trying to save everyone was grinding him down with inexorable pressure. But he didn't know how to stop. Didn't know how to accept casualties as inevitable cost of resistance. Because the moment he accepted that people would die despite his efforts, the moment he started thinking in terms of acceptable losses and strategic trade-offs, he became something he'd sworn never to be. He became someone who measured lives against objectives instead of treating every life as absolute value. In Gotham, that line had been clear. In this galaxy, fighting an empire across multiple worlds, the line was getting blurrier every day. Bruce returned to work on his equipment modifications, pushing thoughts about mortality and limits into the same mental compartment where he stored all the doubts that could paralyze him if acknowledged. He'd worry about breaking points when he reached them. Until then, there was work to do. People to protect. Networks to coordinate. An empire to resist. And somewhere out there, Admiral Thrawn was planning his next test, one designed to find exactly where Bruce Wayne's determination ended and reality's constraints began. What do you think happens next? Part 2 coming soon. Hit the subscribe button.